Welcome back to the Four Horsemen. Our last episode was on the state of Counter-Strike. We took a little breather for the holidays, and now we're back with the state of League of Legends with my old friend and casting partner, PapaSmithy, who is now the president, El Presidente of FlyQuest. He's here to discuss the broader team approach to League of Legends, but we figured it would be good to get an LCS operator on this one. Last year, we did our State of LoL with Alban, the CEO of G2, so it was a more LEC-focused approach. We will be talking about LEC in this episode, but because LCS is returning, did it ever really leave, would be the question. It got rebranded, but the product didn't change substantially. But I would say the LCS...
By the way, Monty, in Mark Z's return to being the commission, that video, he makes a joke like, if you're under a rock, you don't even know what LGA was, and then LCS never left. It's like, that is a funny joke, just not for the commissioner of the league to make when he re-announced. You know what I mean? It's one of those ones where it's like, listen, I like the joke, but again, maybe not the best PR.
So LCS is returning. If you have been under a rock, as Mark Z said, which we'll get to, basically the English language audience did in fact flee under the rock during LTA. And the question now is, will they return to the league? Which undoubtedly some of them will. And I've said this before, we hope that they will. I know you guys think that we want this thing to fail, but the truth of the issue is that our LoL show viewership fell when LCS rebranded. And it wasn't just us. It was literally every single piece of English language League of Legends esports content went when LCS.
Now some of it doesn't exist anymore, like Euphoria.
Yeah. And Hotline League.
Yeah.
And you might be like, well, Euphoria, that's a European show. Yeah, actually all League of Legends esports content, because there was a large number of English-speaking fans who paid attention to other leagues, basically fell. I think the one show that we had that was pretty unaffected was our LCK show, Monty and Wolf show. But outside of that, guys...
Never had any views in the first place.
You said it, not me.
But
I'm not on that Sean spread.
It's still called the Monty and Wolf Show without Monty
We're
on it for a
changing the
year.
name.
Yeah, I know. Some would say that's a sort of seller force for a good say about me, but don't worry about it.
That usually works for good viewership for the first three, and then people get pissed off they're being misled and stop watching. So,
No, but all it reminds me of, because you guys will appreciate this, we're the boomer crowd. It's like when they do those TV shows back in the day where sometimes an actual character would just not even be in the show anymore. Like the main character was dead or whatever, the police detective, and they just keep it going for a few seasons like Mortals or whatever. That's mental. Stop the show, rename it, you mad fuck.
We are. Anyway, the point is that basically all of LoL esports lost a significant contingent of English language viewers across all content. So, I imagine this also affected LEC. I imagine it also affected all the other leagues. And so the LCS returning is potentially a bright spot. Now, not everybody's coming back. And that's going to be an issue. But at least I assume, Papa, this is something that the teams were pushing for, which is the return of the LCS name and brand, because you and I, who have been working in this scene since the very beginning, there is a brand affinity. There is a warmth and joy that comes from seeing the LCS, and it feels really weird to see it changed, not really for any reason, because the brand never had to change to interact with Brazil. They never had to shift the actual brand around it. And I think it just alienated a lot of the legacy viewers who felt like the thing that they had followed for over a decade was being taken away.
Yeah, it's hard to give a succinct answer on... There's a lot packed into what you're talking about, just because last year formats changed globally, right? We went from 2 splits to 3 splits globally with a abbreviated split 1 and then split 2, split 3, while trying to also debut this America's concept of putting together Brazil, Latin America, and North America. We were affected, you didn't even mention it, the SEO changes of if you looked up LCS, that's always going to show up. LTA as an acronym was a new one. You're trying to debut during a time where it's not 2014-15 with super rising interest in general esports, let alone League of Legends esports. There's so many variables there. It's not, there's still succinct takeaways. It's not quite as it's kind of like how we look back on But the first time North America did best of threes, and to most people, it was obvious that doing dual streams at the same time as best of threes was going to lead to like the least scientific conclusion. It's not quite that level of kind of like hard to sift through. Like I can tell you that despite being someone who was down for the combination of, Brazil, Latin America, and North America.
Me too, just not like this.
The idea of like, it wasn't like everything was like approved by all teams at every stage, right? Like obviously the general concept and trying to put it together, that was something that was bought into. But we found out, before you guys, but like after it was decided that it would be like LTA North and LTA South, and had the same feedback about why that acronym, why not LCS and CB LOL. Like that was like, the same experience we had. And I think the regret was felt collectively, a couple of months into the season, and it takes time to uncouple these things. And look, I will say shout out to Riot on how quickly a really hard conversation internally, I'm sure, was had to make that change. Because to debut and to put together like, all the graphics packages, all the, I assume, copyrights and things to get it done.
It's an immense amount of work.
And then to say oops and kind of revert that, and also all the global calendar implications of what was going to effectively be like we're in Brazil, North America switching to the LCS is back, the CBL is back, was a huge undertaking, and I think it's the right one. So to what you're saying, I do think it's really important that the LCS branding is back. I think Travis, when he was still around, but other people talked about how like keeping LCS as your keyword in YouTube was going to be better for viewership, just because again, people understood what the LCS is. There's like little hidden things, like there was definitely some scenarios with visa applications where like you'd be applying for an LTA visa and people would be like, what's the LTA? Which is like a fair question. You Google it and it takes time to work that out. So even just like being able to put LCS back on visa applications is useful. Like,
I mean, even when you just Google stuff, one of the biggest complaints was because the LoL esports site is so garbage. And I felt this complaint too. It was hard to figure out when the game times were. But the thing about LCS is when you Googled it, just like when I Google another American sport team or a league, all of the matches just appear in a table.
Yeah, the Google Calendar kind of integration thing was really important, and then that was gone. And the one thing I want to like open the show with is like, the LCS is back, all of our issues are fixed, and the viewership will look like 2015, 2016, kind of like prophecy coming from me or Riot or anyone. I think it's just, we were presented with, here are the changes for 2026. You look at all of them in isolation, you're like, this is better than it was this year and or last year. But there's still so much work to be done collectively by all parties, teams, players, Riot, content creators, etc., to kind of get the groundswell going again, because, we're going to have to work at this regardless of LCS or not.
By the way, I'll just say at the outset, because this is going to be a theme for me, specifically with the LCS. I'm really bored of this like fucking Mad Libs game we all play every single fucking year with the LCS that goes like this. Oh, things before weren't working and the numbers were going down and all the relevant metrics. So we're going to change to something new and that'll be the solution. Then when that fails, going, well, that wasn't working. So what we should do is go back to what used to be. It's like, what the fuck is that? That logic literally doesn't make any sense. So like, the same people, by the way, who now go, brilliant, the LCS is back, they were the ones going, a rebrand, a chance for a new beginning. Wait a minute, you're the same guys that said to do that. So I just hate the way we have to, like, I'll give you an example. You just said it there. I don't actually agree with what you just said. Okay. Actually, I would say the consensus in League of Legends was it wasn't dual streams, it was best of three. And I was told for a solid half a decade that you can't have best of three in LEC and LCS because when we had it, the viewership wasn't going up, it was going down because more games of the bad teams and who wants to watch a full best of three and all that. Even though, by the way, I spent my entire time watching the LPL and LCK and always thought, well, the format works, that clearly can't be the only issue. But people do, as a general rule, unfortunately, the LCS does have sort of like a get-rich-quick vibe to it where people do think that one snappy change is going to turn everything around and suddenly all the numbers go back up. Or in this case, that you can sort of dive back to a past time. I'm fine with the idea, by the way. You have to try new things. I'll give you another example. Here's one that people have also memory hold. Remember when the real problem was the games were on the weekend, so we need them during the week, like, the Monday Night Football and those games in the NBA. Then all of a sudden it was like, well, no one knew when the games were on. They're on during the week. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you can't literally just wait and go, the number's gone down. That means whatever I did before was definitely wrong. It's like you have to actually extract the general idea of what about the idea didn't work, or what about it could work if you applied it differently, you know?
Yeah, I'll say on both of those, I can give you my opinion and my vantage point. So we'll go with the first one. I agree with you because I was a caster, obviously, when dual streams was happening. So I wasn't like on the Riot side. I didn't have privileged information, and I would come in for international events, which at that time it was either a lot of them were like remote from the North American studio or in person with a lot of North American staff there. So like I kind of got their POV on it, and I was very much like, surely it's the dual streams, guys. It's not the best of threes, and there was definitely like senior leadership who didn't agree with that. You know what I mean? So like when you say that's like that's how senior leadership at that time thought about it, which we now look at and scorn. And at the time I looked on it and scorned. It's not the same senior leadership anymore at the LCS side. So that I would say the fans and the talent were all much more mixed. You know, there were some people who were like, absolutely. And there were other people who were like, no, I agree with you. So it's like, I don't think that was a consensus. I think when it comes to the midweek change, I was on the team side already. It was just as I transitioned from 100 Thieves to FlyQuest, so I just started on the business role. And I remember when it was proposed to me, again by old leadership, it's no longer it was the previous commissioner before Mark C. The way they couched it, I don't know if this is leaking, but whatever, was basically they were looking at they had very advanced data of Twitch viewership metrics, and it was basically like, in general, the most people in the world are on Twitch between this time frame. Therefore, the LCS will do well there, which obviously I raised my hand and was like, how do we know if that's correlation or causational? This is like obviously a massive whiplash change to go from
also the
weekend
general
to
Twitch
midweek.
viewership. Was this specific?
Yeah, well, I mean,
to
yeah, exactly.
was this like all of Twitch's viewership that
Yes.
we're talking about?
So
Yeah, because
it was very
Sort of strange conclusion, because you could actually argue now you're trying to go head to head with everything that everyone else could be putting on.
Let me put this a different way. Like, you know, sure, the NFL is on some primetime slots, like Sunday and Monday nights are good times for American television, but like for scheduled sporting events, I would imagine it's very different for people, because you could say like, okay, well, these are the prime times for all of Twitch viewerships, but a lot of those Twitch viewerships are going to be people who are like at work, putting it like and not really paying attention to a stream, maybe on a second monitor. It'll be people who are like in between classes at school who are just popping in and popping out. Like if you're trying to schedule 5 games of League of Legends, that's appointment viewing, it's really a different crowd. And those people, are likely, if you want them to, because the thing about LCS is they always said, we want people to be fans of LCS to watch all of the games. That has been Riot's point from the very beginning. And so you're saying we want people to be actively engaged across a 5-6 hour long broadcast. And you just can't do that in the middle of a workday. And especially there's a difference with the audience they had, which is old people, because as we know, and we'll get to, there's not a lot of new young people coming into League of Legends. So who's the audience we're talking about? It's mostly millennials. And those people are the ones who are going to be having jobs in the middle of the day, in the middle of the work week. And sure, well, they may be able to have a white collar job where they're putting it on a second monitor. It's not necessarily going to be the same amount of attention that's paid. And perhaps not even really what people want to watch while they're working. Something they want to engage actively.
These are all super valid takes and very similar to the sort of things I was raising in the meeting and other people were bringing up. And so it was more like, to answer your guys' question, at least the information I got, maybe there was even more sophisticated information they didn't share, was basically like, if people watching Twitch streams could be like all collected and added up, the most possible people on twitch.tv/any stream at this time, therefore this is a good spot to move to the LCS. Like what else was being justified? How much of it was related to Valorant coming at the same time? Blah, blah, blah. Like I only have my assumptions around it, but that was what was sold. Obviously, I had my skepticism, and I understand what you're saying about market segmentation. Now, if you remember, the original idea was for the broadcast to start even earlier in LA, which would have been even more in the sweet spot of this time zone and would have been even better for Europe. And, Europe has always had a large impact on North American viewership. In case fans are new, in the EU LCS days, the NALCS waited and started when EU LCS ended and got a host.
It also, the host. That was a huge thing too that people ignored, which was that by moving this, you were eliminating the fact that LEC used to host into LCS on the weekends, which transferred a huge amount of
which was
I don't think it's a coincidence, Monty, that it does feel like European interest in LCS fell apart after that. Like before that, I think most people did watch EU LCS, and then they had a fan like they were TSM fan or CLG fan as well.
I think the timeline was a little bit decoupled at that point. I feel like the LEC as a distinct product had kind of already by end of 2020, start of 2021, kind of like pushed itself forward in a way that there wasn't as much of a transition from the host. But yes, we were giving up the host, Monty, which was another, as you can imagine, like red flag that was raised at the time. I think that was by far the most extreme change that was attempted and the one that we were happiest to see reverted. But yeah, that's... What you're putting forward, Duncan, is valid, but it's worth noting that like there's been multiple regime changes since then. Like the LCS has also had a lot of brand refreshes and other changes, and I think there has been too many attempts at, I don't know, sexing it up every year with like lots of new features. But
the thing is though that I'm of two minds about this because. With in the LCS's case, you're dealing with a protracted decline in viewership since the beginning of the pandemic, and you can't do nothing. So, like, I am really sympathetic that Riot is at least attempting to take swings at things. Now, obviously, I don't agree with many of the things that they've done, but I did agree in principle with combining the Brazilian and the North American leagues to foster more overall viewership and like create that rivalry. I just didn't agree with the way it was executed. And indeed, we will be actually seeing more of that this coming year in LCS in a way that I think is just better. So like it does seem like an improvement. But I think just sitting there and doing nothing with the LCS, not changing the product, not, it's as they slowly bled out and lost important teams that had large fan bases. I don't think you can do that. So
and I agree. And
if you're taking over running a farm, let's say you're a new regime, so you're not even the old one. If you're taking over running a farm, I wouldn't advise tear down all the fences everywhere. I'd figure out why those fences were there and then take down the one that are not necessary, if you know what I mean.
I agree with Duncan, and I think the only part I'll contest, Monty, like you're actually on the right side here and I'm contesting the right side, is it works. I mean, I feel like by the end of 2020, there was already kind of like the LCS is like fallen too much into a format. They need to change things. And I agree that no one wants to kind of like watch something slip away. You want to like get in there and try to make positive change. But the problem is if you go through 3 regime changes, like if you sell a restaurant on and on, from a family business and sell a restaurant every 2 years, like then there's not really kind of like consistent learnings from it. And I think that's what was lost here is like lots of stuff was tried, but there wasn't really like a codex of logical conclusions all the way from like, let's try best of 3s until the LCS is back in 2026. And sometimes I think people have to look back and like cryptically work out what the learnings were rather than someone who can sit there and be like, no, I lived through this. Here are all the thoughts.
I think the problem is that, like we talk about them scheduling during the weekdays, is that some of the changes that they were making was basically praying that, if you build it, they will come, like Field of Dreams logic, where it's like, if we build this broadcast on a different day, then the people will show up and we'll stop bleeding viewership, which is just an insane conclusion. Because what they did was they alienated people. They alienated people by constantly changing the broadcast days, by constantly changing the format. Although the format is something that I think it was overstated. I think you can change that. And if anything, you should change that. And then they changed the LCS name. But instead of just tweaking, like keeping the product in its current form generally, meaning on weekends with the LCS name, with certain on-camera personalities, with certain elements of the show, and then tweaking format or having the Brazilian element or changing up the analyst desk, and then like mostly it would have been about marketing, I think more effective marketing. But it feels like Riot, they took this scattershot approach that wasn't protecting the product they already had and trying to expand its reach. And instead we're just doing like the lowest hanging fruit of, if we move broadcast day and time, then the people will watch more, which is like such insane logic. You need to give people a reason to watch more. And if you change the time, there were lots of people who just stopped watching LCS because it was just on during the week.
I was on Hotline League, and I think this will resonate with Duncan and Richard, because I don't think they would have heard this before. Like, I was on the first Hotline League right after it leaked, right? And someone called in. I'd heard them call in before, and they were like, "Hey, like, I'm a avid LCS watcher since Bay Life days of TSM 2012, 2013 LCS start, and I have a kid now, and I want there to be like intergenerational fandom for the LCS, but now it's no longer on the weekend, it's during weekdays. Like, I can't watch it with my kid anymore. I feel like I'm being like pushed out." And as the guest on the show, I had to be like, that's actually what is really exactly happening. Like, that is, in fact, they are searching for new people, and you are specifically the person who can't attend. Like, for me, when I was in the meetings, I was like, hey, like, the crowd has a really big influence on a League of Legends show. You definitely know when it's there, and the cheering means something, and you do the camera shots. Who is going to be there at Wednesday at 12 p.m. PST in Los Angeles, like during a weekday, during a work day? Like, the crowd will be empty. Like, are we going to do like other things, or are we going to just kind of like live with the fact that we're just never going to film the crowd? Like, these were all things that were seen as kind of like trade-offs to, but this is where the viewership will come, and obviously ended up being incredibly off. So yeah, it's just it's a tricky thing for sure.
By the way, another thing that is a classic running theme for me with the LCS is the reason why I'm actually quite unsympathetic, even though I generally agree with Monty. In general, I would want the best for esports and things to grow so there'd be more opportunities. For example, I have players that play in the LCS that are friends of mine that I'd like to see succeed and play in front of hundreds of thousands of people, like the old LCS, etc. But one of my other problems is this. Here's why I have very little sympathy. Because Riot, I've always said this, for the first, let's say, 5-6 years at least, I might be too miserly, maybe 7-8 years, where they were quite successful with League of Legends, especially in North America, with this giant product that everyone watched. The joke was, especially back in those piggyback days of the LCS, no one ever would have thought Europe would be able to overtake North America. That was a nonsense idea. It could never have happened. In fact, if anything, Europe was like a mini pipeline to North America. People went there for the millions of dollars and the big contracts, etc. One of the things I've always hated is they absolutely rested on their laurels for a long time. And as I've pointed out with the earlier thing, it's only when things go drastically wrong, they start just pressing buttons and pulling levers and taking things down. So here's one thing I despise about that. I've always given the analogy that when Riot used to pat themselves on the back for like beating Counter-Strike, for example. By the way, we didn't have Asia, for fuck's sake. I used to say that's like being a kid who was given your dad's Ferrari and you just beat a Ford Fiesta in a street race and you think you're hot shit. But in this situation, while you had the Ferrari was when you needed to do all the changes and you could have maxed it out. Now you don't have the Ferrari anymore. Now you're in a Ford Fiesta. Now that the upgrades barely even work. Because think of some of the things they changed only at the end. As far as I can tell, because reality just told them you're just wrong on these topics, like BO3. They've only tried BO3 now, mate, because there's nothing left to try. They've tried everything else. Do you know how much BO3, if they'd done it properly, could have been insane in the Bjergs and Doublelift days? That could have been a way to triple your viewership, make it even bigger. I'll give you another example. How about the idea, let's turn Twitch subs on when no one fucking watches Twitch or our product anymore. Bro, think of those days when CLG and TSM within the PAX games, we have 500,000 people watching. Mate, that alone would have literally like subsidised part of the fucking league. Everyone idiot would have paid for it if it had given you a little Teemo icon in the chat or something bizarre like that. And then the last one I'll even throw out there, because they still haven't even done this, is the residency rules. Bro, you were just in the... Well, technically you still have. We just haven't seen the next season yet. Last year, you were in the most popular North American League of Legends team. You proved, like all of them fucking have, that it's not about North American players. The fan lies when he says that. What he means is, in an ideal world, if everyone was as good as Chovy, I'd want my Chovy to be North American. If you actually offer them Parlofox or fucking Quad, mate, they will choose Quad. And if you tell them, I've got a squad that's got 2 North Americans in, but actually the rest of them are Europeans and the coaches, as long as it's good, mate, as long as it can go head-to-head with Gen G, that's all they actually care about. So I also think one of the other bizarre conceits was this notion that we're going to sort of like foster talent by limiting restrictions. I even think that's the most un-American sports move I can ever imagine. If anything, even Europe's had to learn the American sport method works. You just bring talent, bro. People watch talent. They want to watch top players. I think, again, if we go back in time in a time machine in 2020 and there's no import rules, mate, you could have all sorts of fabulous players coming to the LCS that could have been top 8 at Worlds and mixing it up in MSIs. And so, again, the point is, these are all things, like these are totally valid potential changes, but it feels like Riot only considers them when there's nothing left to try. The joke is, by the way, that's actually one of my all-time favourite quotes that Christopher Hitchens used to say. He used to say the thing about the United States of America is they always do the right thing after they've tried everything else.
Yeah.
Hey guys, you're watching the State of League of Legends, and that means that the League of Legends season is right around the corner. So there's never been a better time to go on over to Prize Picks and set your first lineups for this LoL season. Not only League of Legends, but with Counter-Strike, Valorant resuming, they've got all of these titles on Prize Picks alongside playoffs that are going on right now. Go Broncos. Hopefully they're going to win their game. It'll already have happened by the time you see this. But if you're interested in other playoff action and the Super Bowl, which is also upcoming, you can make your picks on Prize Picks. So whether you're into traditional sports or esports, Prize Picks has got you covered. So Prize Picks now has early payouts as well. If your player gets off to a hot start, you have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And to play Prize Picks, all you need to do is pick more or less of a given stat. You select several players. Now in League of Legends, this could be, will this player get more or less kills on a certain map? Or in Counter-Strike, more or less kills. Could be a quarterback getting more or less yards, or a running back getting more or less points, right? So these are all options for you. You can pick those stats, combine some players, and that's how you win. You guys can download the Prize Picks app today and use code HORSEMEN, plural, MEN, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HORSEMEN to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
Yeah, it's a pretty good summary. I mean, obviously, like, having watched it at a distance now, because I'm like a lot of people, I just got bored of the product, I guess, and there's only like so many hours in a day, right, that you can like realistically dedicate to it. There's I was getting more and more into the Dota esports scene to the point where I'm actually working in it now, and so it's like, it's no contest for me which one I'm going to dedicate more time to. But I think on top of that as well, what you're talking about with that guy who's got kids now, Riot never had a contingency.
That's me, by the way.
When our fans start aging out. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's technically it's all of us if we're all still fans of the league. You know, I mean, like it's not just that you've got kids. It's that, you know, you got wives and, you know, partners and, you know, maybe elderly
other interests and obligations. I mean, like, you know, the fact of the matter is like, I didn't watch hardly any LTA last year. And I am somebody who has been the most involved in League of Legends out of almost anybody on Earth. You know what I mean? Like that's pretty damning. And it's not even, and sure, I'm in Korea, but it's on in like the morning, my time. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's not terrible time zone for me.
It's not just their choice around like the scheduling thing, which everybody pointed out to them at the time. I mean, like, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to try this and it's like 50-50 dissenting voices on it. Everybody said that is a shitty time zone and you're going to kill viewership by doing that, right? It's a shitty, you know, days to having it on through the week. And it's going to kill viewership if you do that. But equally as well, it's like, where do I go if I want to catch up? Like, where do I go if I want to digest? Where do I go if I want to, like, know exactly where the state of the league is? You know, I finally got some free time to myself. I want to reconnect. There isn't really a product that tailors to that.
LFN.
And there is in every... okay. LFN, my bad. Go to Last Free Nation.
We're not in the client, though, bro. We're not being pushed by Riot, so we don't exist to some degree, do we? Yeah.
You know, there really isn't. There really isn't a place you can go to get an equivalent digest product that you have in every other single sport. I mean, because think about it as well. In every other single sport, you have an abundancy problem, right? Which is, realistically, I cannot watch every game in my favorite sport all season. Like, there isn't enough hours in the day, right? We're talking hundreds of games. So where do I go to catch like all of the highlights, all of the storylines, all of the results, and get it done in an hour or two tops?
What LCS match of the day, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Well, there isn't one. I mean, like, they were talking about making one.
It sort of had. I feel like.
Merger was
do you guys remember what was that show, Monty? That like, what was it called? You remember Riot?
Who was on it?
Riot had that show, Monty, that was like. It wasn't called Loading Room or something. They had like this like parallel thing that they had that tried to like Riot has tried to service that what you guys are talking about, and it never really took off. And I don't know if that's just like clips on Twitter is enough for people, or there just isn't enough fans or whatever. Like, there's tried to be like low and high produced, talent or talent agnostic clip shows, and they just never perform. Maybe it's because nothing's behind a paywall and like theoretically you could watch whatever you want, but I feel like clips in the modern age clip shows, I guess, in the modern age have never really taken off. But I agree with you. I like Match of the Day.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of an esports equivalent really that's been done well in the same way a sports thing is. But equally as well, yeah, it might not take off at the start. You have to understand, if this is Riot's folly. They don't really look too far ahead. When they made the game initially, they knew they had to pull out every dirty trick imaginable to get as much saturation of a player base.
Are we going to talk about the Dota All Stars website and forum thing here?
Oh, I mean, we could go into all of that. I love bringing all
talk
that
about Pendragon and stuff.
Written about it many times.
Good times.
But I mean, like, there wasn't a dirty trick they weren't willing to pull to become market leaders. It was a level of kind of corporate ruthlessness we hadn't really seen in esports, right, to make their product successful. And it's like, okay, you've done that now. What next? And there's never they don't plan like this is 5 stages. They plan this is the stage, and then when we're successful at the end of that, we're going to revisit. And so you have a highlight show that you broadcast at the most convenient time for everyone on a weekend. You have that highlight show. You might not need it year 1, year 2. Because all your audience is young and they can watch all the games and stay up all night, and they're all NA, so they're all on fucking Adderall anyway, and they never sleep. They're just vampires.
Continue.
Do
hold on that one. Hold.
Yeah. Right.
Poker face.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, whatever. But by the time they're bouncing a baby on their fucking knee, they're gonna want to find that. They're gonna want to find that highlight show. Oh wait, there's one that's been going for a while with an established broadcast talent pool and a repartee. So that would have been a good idea, for me at least. But I think more importantly as well, when you've got other obligations, the important thing is what is going to make me rush an obligation or switch shit around so I can have the other thing as well. And again, you only get to do a very limited amount of this as an adult. It's like, right, I definitely want to watch the football, so on a weekend, the missus is definitely having the kids. And that means I'm doing all this other shit in the middle of the week when I'm tired from work. We're gonna make a concession so I can have the sport. It's not worth it for League of Legends in its current form. The product they've got is so diluted compared to what it used to be. Like, I used to legitimately get hyped for TSM, CLG. I used to
It's an event back then, just for the match happening, wasn't it?
Just that one game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, keep in mind that game, and that's back then when Twitch viewership wasn't that high. That one game got the
they'd have 500,000 concurrent viewers in 2015.
Yeah.
For that game in a regular season.
That one game in their league, in a regular season game with relatively low stakes, would eclipse the peak of the Overwatch League's highest ever day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So that's the product that they had back then. And it's like, you have to nurture that. TSM isn't even in the league anymore.
Neither CLG.
Why has that been allowed? Yeah, neither CLG. Why has this been allowed to happen?
Yes.
Like, who are the flagship characters in the league right now? Where are the Dyruses? Where are the St. Vicious? Where's the hot
By the way, this is a point I always make on our show as well, because, by the way, it's also happening now in Chinese League of Legends, like RNG and FPX or World Champions and MSI Champions, orgs have left the game. I always tell people, I actually don't think people realise how damaging that is as well, because remember, I can be a fan of a new set of players, but I'm not going to be a legacy fan of a new team. And it's why, actually, the joke is, we actually figured this out on IRC and Counter-Strike 20 years ago. ago. You just let some twat take the fucking name and then start the next team with it and call it Four Kings, even if it's nothing to do with the original Four Kings. Like, it might sound silly, but the joke is people would expect me to laugh because TSM left. I actually remember thinking TSM leaving is one of the darkest days in the history of fucking League of Legends. You've essentially just let like the 49ers just leave the NFL. Like, it doesn't matter whether you like them or not, mate. You have to have those orgs.
The topics you guys talk about are super interesting, Richard. And like that sort of stuff is the stuff I ruminate on, right? Because my general mandate right now is to grow FlyQuest as much as possible in League of Legends and further to that. And there's a lot of different things you can kind of look at and explain the decline you're talking about. Because, for example, like League of Legends, I started watching League of Legends streamers on Justin TV before Twitch TV even existed. You know, it was Justin TV and owned at that time. Azubu was like the like secret kind of like OGN subscription service that did Azubu itself was only just like the name of two of the teams. It wasn't even its own like Azubu.tv platform yet. And the rise of Twitch TV was also the heyday of League of Legends. So one thing for you guys to think about that you probably haven't thought about is when a non-League of Legends person associated with a League of Legends event or streamer or, you know, entered the Curse House back when they used to like stream all of those like pre-Liquid Curse days, that gave them legitimacy and relevance to the growing Twitch.tv audience. Nowadays, just chatting is the like apple of the eye of Twitch, and you don't see LCS players on, you know, just chatting streams. And like that's the huge difference is that League of Legends is absolutely the like prototype of a Twitch TV project. And look, we can obviously get into how they like fumbled their advantage and all these things, which is like a lot of what we all malign is how League of Legends didn't take 2014, 15 success as like, holy fuck, imagine how much more we could do with this success, and kind of like didn't want to, they didn't want to like mess with what was working, which ultimately has hurt the growth of the game. But it is interesting how like now, you know, internally we're like, how can we get our players kind of like associated with just chatting in a way that would have been inverse, you know, 12 years ago, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think, you know, there were people who were very much on the just chatting / IRL streaming, and case in point is XQC. Because XQC, when he was an active Overwatch player, he would do a lot of
We don't have
IRL
anyone in League of Legends quite as bad as how he was fumbled by Overwatch.
Sure, yeah, that was terrible. But the idea here is that, you know, in 2017, so this had been the early days, 2018, of just chatting IRL, he was actually on his phone live streaming from the Overwatch League studio or from BlizzCon at the Overwatch World Cup. He would just come up to me and like talk to me on his live stream and stuff like that. But he was doing all this stuff. Like, we don't have League of Legends players who are even trying to do that, or Riot, who is, you know, doing this. Nobody's like behind the scenes at the LCS studio on their phone doing an IRL stream being like, here's what we're going to do for the game. Here's this person. I'm going to talk to them. Like, XQC is, you know, a different breed for sure. But it was insane how, especially at the Overwatch World Cup, he was just walking around talking to all these players from all these different countries and like tapping into their fan base. And sure, that fumble by Overwatch League was immense, like no doubt. But
not just a fumble.
It was the worst
they tried. Let's be clear. They tried to actively.
They drove him
him
out. You know, like,
yes.
Absolutely.
No, it was terrible. It was so.
The narrative around him is a disgrace. I mean, put it this way: saying someone is homophobic, right? We have all told people to suck a dick at some point in your life, like suck a dick, suck my dick, go suck a dick. You do this. If you say that to someone and you're not aware they're gay, and they do the Uno reverse. By the way, I'm gay. Like, so like. Oh, what, I'm a homophobe now? Like, no, it's a phrase. Like, that is ridiculous. And like, literally, Activision, people at Activision Blizzard know that's not homophobic, by the way, when they do that to someone, when anyone does that to someone. What they're doing is they're trying to put some fucking slime on you, put some stink on you, so you can't go anywhere else. And put it this way, it's by the grace of some divine providence, in my opinion, that he's a top-tier streamer, because I have to, like, actually, like, wince my ears. I have to, like, tune into a frequency to understand what he's saying. Yet the kids love him, you know, like, he's super popular, he's going to be super successful. It's great.
It was also just unnecessary to do that to him, because he is a really reasonable person, in my dealings with him.
Absolutely.
You could have totally like. Obviously, the stream thing is a persona, but you can have totally rational conversations with him, and I don't think he's some sort of like crazy psycho. He's not. He's pretty normal, honestly.
If I try to look at how that happened again, now that I've been on the business side, right? Because obviously I was just talent when that was happening. I think that the big reason it happened was because it was a developer-run league. You know, it was like Activision Blizzard's putting on the league, which means Activision Blizzard's internal business company HR kind of what are you allowed to do and not allowed to do, and like what can you speak about, you know, and what can't you speak about, was all being led by, this is my assumption from the outside, by like, you know, one team, and that has to apply to everyone, and look, it has to apply to the players. And the moment that you kind of decide that, I mean, the ripple effects are things like the Pepe's being banned and stuff like
so
that.
Stupid.
You know, and like that's,
I've said it before, but
that was ESL or like, I look at what ESL does in their kind of content, because I try to like forward examples of stuff I like in Counter-Strike now that I've been like following that ecosystem really closely for the last 2 years. What they're still doing, not like look at this from 2017, you know, when like obviously the meta was different, let's say, in terms of what you could or couldn't talk about. I'm like, oh, this is pretty edgy. It's cool that they're doing this. Like, I just think if it was, you know, OGN running the league or, you know, ESL running the league, I do think that like that hard an edge, like that one scenario wouldn't have happened, if you know what I mean. But the moment that it ends up being a mandate, because like I feel it in smaller ways where like my League of Legends players will like be at a public part of the like office, like eating lunch and then, you know, using League of Legends slang, which sometimes edges towards things that you should not be saying in a business scenario pretty fast. And then I have to go around and explain to them like, hey, what would someone not in esports who walks by and hears this and takes it the wrong way because they don't know all of the like data or the like context of what you're saying, take away, please be mindful of that. You know, like obviously like I understand both worlds and can code switch between it, but when there's no code switching happening, when it's just like Activision HR saying this is like the mandate for literally tens, hundreds of thousands of employees across everything, that's where like people get framed out like this, like XQC, and ended up having like obviously explosive consequences.
Right. And like,
by the way, you're getting to another point though. This is actually a relevant point to League of Legends. Riot also, until the bitter end, it wasn't until the post-COVID era when they tried all that crazy stuff like Cutie Cinderella and letting, I forget even the name of the what was Gabby, Latigris, and people do a little bit of edgy, right? They waited too long for that too, mate. So here's another thing I can tell you, turn to people like Richard off. They gave him a PG-13 esport, mate. Yeah, it's all for adults. We're all players adults, and all the people watching are adults, but we pretend like the average viewer is a 9-year-old Disney viewer. Like, that is a turn-off, mate. I don't, again, as Richard said, I want someone to be able to say fuck off, like they do in a Counter-Strike game, and go fuck you. That wouldn't make anyone clutch their purse in Counter-Strike, bro.
No,
that's some Riot guy thinking it's in like the 19th century or something. I don't get why that's edgy.
It's not just that. I mean, like the writing was on the wall, and again, I know Papa won't remember this. You know, let's not forget, I think it was Dignitas that they punished for like dancing in the fountain over ending a game. Right, and because they would considered it bad.
But that exact example, the one when I think of Dignitas, I mostly think of that like banning them for ARAMing the final situation. I don't remember the dancing one, but that makes sense.
Well, pretty soon, I don't know if they actually banned them, but I'll give you an example. They literally did fine High for doing a middle finger in a game.
Yeah, and High got fined for a middle finger. It was basically they were like doing the dances.
I mean, they don't like people. I think the kids call it tactical crouching. They don't, but you know, they don't like people doing stuff like that either in their games.
But you should like you should do what the NFL does, and this is the thing about being an independent league is the NFL hilariously these days they will fine players for like celebrations that are apparently inappropriate, but then on the NFL Twitter and like all social media they'll just post clips of that celebration.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, which is outrageous.
No, it's a good tactic.
Too.
It's a good tactic.
Yeah, it's outrageous to do that. I mean, it really is, especially when you get into the realm of like, you know, oh, we don't want any political statements on your cleats, but you've literally got political statements in the end zone, and you're going to fine a guy for having like a 9/11 memorial on his cleats. That's a real example that happened in NFL.
The first one I ever saw was
fuck that league.
The first one I ever saw was like the yellow card for taking your shirt off in football, soccer. Like that was the first one where I was like, I was pretty young, I think, still when that happened. It's a while ago.
And what started that, funnily enough, was it might have been a Liverpool thing, actually, because I think it might have been when Robbie Fowler took his shirt off, and underneath he had a political statement.
I mean, Robbie Fowler got fined for a lot of different celebrations, bro. I still remember the cocaine one.
Genius.
That was the cocaine one was the best one I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, Robbie Fowler's a fucking legend and a lunatic.
Yes.
You won't believe this. My favourite player as a boy.
Of course.
Who could have imagined?
But anyway, back to Duncan.
No, I want to talk about the LCS stuff because
I want to.
No, like
but let me just elaborate on what Duncan was saying with the whole thing. It's not just that they Disneyfied Riot, like what Riot did with LCS. It's not just that they Disneyfied it, and it's not just that they actively punished anyone that showed any kind of like edge to the personality. It's that they had opportunities to like actually bring in people that like would have absolutely shone. Like it's like, you know, the Tyler One thing was like a no-brainer. And
there's their XQC.
Yeah.
And the best part is, just like XQC, turned out he was actually like a wizard at every game too, and he's like a chess master again. And you thought he was just some dunce.
You thought he was a meathead, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like what the only reason he ever got involved officially with the product was by way of an apology, because an employee said he hoped he got cancer and it leaked.
Yes.
And so that, and then Riot go, look, see, we can hang with the kids. It's like, no, you can't. You have no interest in any of this. People like me, you know, like that watch Counter-Strike. Think about all of the things we get in that compared to like what you get in League of Legends. And there's nobody actively trying to smash all the character out of Counter-Strike. There's no like, you know, Valve aren't coming to people before the majors and going, listen, no flipping anyone off. Like, we've literally got like the IGL are the best team in the world right now, literally comes on stage and the crowd chant, fuck you, Apex. He's flipping everyone off. It's like Attitude. It's like Stone Cold Steve Austin in Attitude Era WWE. And it's fucking amazing. And it's great. And put it this way, back to my original point before I toss it back to Monty, that's the type of entertainment you do say, listen, here's the kid, I'm off, sorry darling, right? It's worth it for that. It ain't worth it for some insipid.
By the way,
League
speaking
Legends.
of fumbling, you had Reginald and Doublelift, and you didn't want people talking shit and being rude. You don't want to win, mate. You just don't want to win. You just don't want to win.
You had Reginald and Doublelift at each other's throat, and you could have hyped up that rivalry.
That would have been amazing.
Cut a fucking promo for it, UFC style, like Conor McGregor and Khabib.
Exactly.
And your viewership is back. But no, you apparently don't care about that. You don't. Like, it's like Duncan says, it's like Riot don't want to win unless they win only by their decisions.
Yes.
And then they make all the wrong decisions. Right, sorry, Money.
No, I wanted to return it to the LCS and talk about how, you know, one of the ways with the state of League as it is currently is to find the people, like you guys are saying, and find the techniques that are contemporary and modern. And I do think that encouraging, not everybody is XQC, obviously. He's one of one. But having the players be encouraged to make this kind of content, because to Papa's point earlier, what made LCS popular in the first place wasn't the quality of the games. It was the personalities and the fact that there was no difference in 2012 between esports and the biggest streamers. These were the same people. They were the same people. And so you had the wave of millennial culture that was going along with that pushed people into esports. But there has been no adoption of contemporary techniques for people. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, is on their fucking TikTok stream, you know, showing how cool it is to be a pro gamer in the back of the LCS and what it's actually like, and doing these interactions as they go on stage. You know, there isn't the kind of content that resonates with people that will push people into becoming fans of the product.
Here's another example of where League of Legends esports is distinct from games like Counter-Strike, for example, where the developer doesn't put their hands on it and it's up to the TOs what happens, and you can have different rules, right? Similarly, when we had that G2 CEO on, one of the things that actually baffles me, he was almost like begrudgingly laughing about how proud he was when he explained that he was the person who didn't allow co-streaming in the LEC. Like, if you say something like that in a chat with me, I'm just going to call you a fucking imbecile. Like, that's not even funny to me. I can't even get a dark humor out of that. You're just a cretin. Like, again, you don't understand, Monty, the modern delivery methods. So here's an example I think is mental that isn't to this day a thing. What is this shit where they pre-approve core streamers and announce them like they were an alternate talent group, right? Who knew that Cadril would be the biggest League of Legends streamer in the world? Nobody. Not a single person. Well, you know how you find more Cadrils? Let people fucking do it. Like, I would have allowed literally, if you don't know how Counter-Strike tournaments work, you send an email in, but unless you're literally me who will 24/7 talk shit on the product, or you're someone who's unwilling to like let their sponsors be on screen, you're going to try and advertise a rival sponsor, essentially any non-retard can get the core streaming rights to a Counter-Strike tournament, including the major in certain cases, maybe not this one because they had their own bizarre thing there because it was also with Kick, etc. But anyway, my point is, I would have, in the same way, Monty, as you love going on about how all these games are developed from the sandbox, I would have just allowed carte blanche core streaming from day one, because guess what? I want all the old pros to do the core stream as well. And maybe one of them doesn't, I can literally blow 200 of them can have 10 viewers as long as one of them hits. And mate, that's how you find people, because there's another thing. In the modern day, one thing we have learned about esports is it's actually somewhat diminishing returns what people want from a tradition. What I want, a traditional, professional stream with the suit and tie, and you have the sheen of this is sports. I'm a boomer in that sense. The kids do want the Oni Pixel of the world. The joke is, Oni Pixel even recently, right, I'd fuck all do this, dipped his foot in Valorant and everyone was loving it too. Like, this is how the modern person views the game. They want a mixture of a podcast in the game live. They want a watch party in the game live. Riot is still just like putting their toes in the water on that and going, but should we allow LS to co-stream this other region? It's like, mate, the idea that's even a question is blowing my mind. The idea you would ever, by the way, go and do stuff like, Dom, I didn't like what you said in solo queue. You're banned from co-streaming for a year. Like, again, you're just taking shotguns and shooting your feet over and over again. The upside is so minimal for these things.
When it comes to co-streaming, you know what I've always wanted a broadcast to do? I've suggested this to some TOs, and I just hope someone runs with it, because I think it's a really cool idea. But I would like, while the broadcast is running, or maybe as in one of the gap days, but when the players are having a rest or whatever, you have a kind of a red zone, and it's all of the best bits of all of the core streams. Right. And then what you do, so you're obviously then promoting the core streamers, but you're also potentially, let's say like a core streamer, one of those guys that have 200 viewers, and something really funny happens, or he makes a really good observation or whatever it is, and you fold it into the highlight show. Because it's like, you should be saying to people, look, you don't just have to watch the official broadcast here. We're going to do it traditional sports style. We've got commentators. We've got an analysis desk. Of course, you don't even have that in LCS anymore, but whatever. But if that's not your style and you want to watch it, in a more casual setting, we've got XQC, we've got this guy, we've got that, we've got her, we've got this. Cool. Like, just promote that shit. Make it part of your broadcast. You're pulling all the numbers at the end anyway. You're getting the reach. Exactly. They have to promote your sponsors. That's part of the agreement. So I don't understand the reticence for the model, because this idea that we pay for the broadcast, we pay for the tournament, so you shouldn't get the free content. It's like, then it's not like they're not giving something back to you. You take their numbers. They give you their reach. People that would watch XQC watching LCS don't necessarily watch LCS.
Yes.
So it's so crazy.
By the way, I do think what you just said there was the flaw in the thinking. You just outlined it there. I do think before they thought, again, we only want to succeed via our method, which is the official broadcast. And then I also think they very naively, by the way, thought we will just cannibalize our own broadcast. As you just outlined, that's not true. In fact, in my opinion, Cadril getting paid that giant bag by EWC almost proves that actually, if Cadril doesn't turn his stream on, there won't be the same viewership to EWC. Yeah. They won't be on the main stream. They'll watch Cadril doing whatever the fuck he's doing. So I do think that is you've outlined a key gap between what they thought and what was reality in my opinion.
I think the way, and I'm sure this is a popular opinion on this call, we're very biased in this sense, is the thing that I really resonated with when I was working for OGN, and this wasn't necessarily true with Riot Korea, they didn't really get it at the start, they're better at it these days, and definitely North America didn't subscribe to, is I love the fact that OGN, through their content strategy, wanted you to both look at a really talented player and be like, holy fuck, this guy is good, just like we would with, Messi or Ronaldo or a great sports player. But they also wanted you to laugh at them for their the fact that they were also an awkward nerd or came through the same way a lot of us come through, video game journey.
It makes you relatable.
And they would always make you relatable by showing both at the same time, knowing that if they showed you being awkward, you wouldn't suddenly be like, oh, that Riven outplay wasn't sick from you, Faker, against the Cassiopeia. You would be able to compartmentalize both sides. I think that the Riot Global, especially the LCS approach, up until very recently was very much NFL focused. You guys know that. Like that's like the tone they were policing towards and trying to make decisions towards.
By the way,
and
also hilarious because they didn't have anybody from the NFL that they actually hired. So it's a bunch of people saying NFL without actually knowing anything internally about the NFL.
That's what they were going for, which obviously it does affect the tone of your broadcast and things like that. And I think that's why co-streaming was so positively received, in 2020, because it was so different to the tone Riot was putting out until maybe end of 2022, early 2023.
By the way, also how hilarious is it that even the NFL benefits from a fucking
nowadays
former players?
So the big missed opportunity I see that I'm sure you guys could also make the connection of is the inspiration that I think Riot missed because they didn't see it as sports entertainment. They saw it as like a pure sport. Is WWE, just because the one thing people probably don't know is that the biggest, for a long time, these stats can change, but for a long time they had like the biggest YouTube channel in the world. They have always been a first move on every emergent social media or video streaming platform. For example, they were like the biggest Vine account in the world for when that was relevant for half a second. Obviously, they were early on YouTube, early on every single platform, and I think you guys are talking about, why not turn on your TikTok? I think obviously the market is saturated in these things. We can look at reasons why not to do it, even though the answer is you should still do it and some cream will rise to the top. But I think if League of Legends esports had the same mindset of like, here's the newest thing that's out, how can we show off what is special about our project or our property to the world?
They were late on TikTok, mate.
They were late on everything. They were always protectionist, I think. But you get the idea of like, why can't we have that in our client or what? They always wanted to be like, how can we control it? When in reality, if they just jumped on every trend, then as we know now, in the world of algorithms, they'd be getting served up way more than they are.
I think one of the things about Cadrill's success, which is underappreciated, is that he was like the only League esports content creator on TikTok for a long time because he was on there first and his clips were blowing up, and other people are on there now, but he's still the biggest. And not only that, but people who are on TikTok will remember how good the LPL's TikTok was, like fucking hilarious memes.
Yeah, I remember.
By the way, Monty, along these lines, I'll tell you another example of a fumble, right? Another person in League who is huge on TikTok is Shocks.
Yep.
Bro, if you'd played that right, that'd be on your channel. She'd have just been putting that background content on your channel and blowing it up. But instead, she's on her own channel because you haven't provided that avenue or you haven't negotiated a contract, etc. Like, this is one of the saddest things is like, I'm not even saying like see into the future and be presciently figure out the next. Like, that's hard to do. I totally acknowledge that. Some of these things were just right there. And as we've noticed, the same theme keeps coming up. Riot doesn't want to succeed by any means necessary. They want to succeed in a very specific way that sometimes the problem might be that decision tree might not ever get to success, and that mentality is a flaw.
I don't think that is their mentality anymore, but in the time where it needed to not be their mentality, it was their mentality. Duncan is the best way, because I can even say my journey of like 6 years now of being directly working with Riot on a product, the LCS. For the first few years, it was incredibly difficult to kind of push forward any new ideas or critique. I would not say that about the last couple years. And again, we can all point and laugh as to why, or kind of like ascertain as like, obviously the relevance of the esport wasn't what it once was. But personally, I find it a lot more rewarding to work on this space now. And the only analogy I can give is if I win a title with an unlimited budget, it's way less rewarding than winning a title with a small budget. Like it is fun to try to make the most of the scenario that it is now, but we can only look on and scorn as to the missed opportunities of 2014 to 17 for sure.
It's a brand new year here in 2026, and if you're looking for some personal improvement, you might look at your grooming routine if you're a man. And who can help you with that? Well, of course, it is Mando. They offer a variety of body washes and deodorants and other men's grooming products. This is their whole body deodorant. I really like the bourbon leather scent or the clover wood scent personally. Comes in stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, which is great because it's like a lotion that you rub into your armpits or any other place where you might have odor, feet, your Grundle, wherever. I actually find myself using that one more than any of the others right now. A product I never thought I'd enjoy, but I have thoroughly enjoyed it. They also have spray-on deodorant, which I know some of our LFN hosts really like. And, it's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. All products are baking soda free and paraben free. They also offer the wipes, which if you're, let's say, out exercising, you're out camping and you want to freshen up, you can just go ahead and get those wipes. It's extremely, extremely convenient. So yeah, I would check out Mando, and you will have an excellent time. You can control body odor anywhere with Shop Mando and get 20% off plus free shipping with code HORSEMEN, that's plural, MEN, at shopmando.com. New customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. That is Horsemen. So thank you guys very much. And thank you to Mando for continuing to sponsor our show. So I want to talk about the business realities of League of Legends esports and the LCS. Recently, the head of business over at T1 has come out and publicly stated that it's very difficult. Very few of the teams are profitable right now. During the pandemic, we know that Riot, you're not going to be able to comment on this, but we know that Riot was increasing payments to the teams because there was a bit of a crisis and there used to be a flat stipend that was given. Riot has since announced that basically the reason why they were getting rid of some of the franchise teams in the league and reducing the number of leagues worldwide was that there were too many professional teams to divide the amount of money the revenue that was being generated, which is very reasonable, I think, to say that. And they've kind of switched their system over towards...
I do love that, though, because that's actually a really good short-term move, Monty. Hey, I'm not getting enough of this pie. Kick two people out, give me your share. There you go. Love it.
I know, which also flies in the face of Riot's messaging for a decade of, we're going to grow the pie for everybody, which is one of the stupidest fucking analogy. Growing the pie has to be one of the most bullshit corporate buzzwords imaginable. It's fucking garbage. Anyway.
By the way, also, just as a random shout out, if any of you just happen to be watching, the joke is you pro players don't even watch content yourselves. That sort of says something. But shout out to every pro who participated in the LCS player walkout 2 years ago over NACL salaries. Now you get paid NACL salaries. How did that work out?
Less,
you picked the dumbest time in the history of the fucking sport to do a player walkout, guys. Well done. But anyway, just a shout out.
But the realities of the esports business right now for Riot is they're trying to switch the model where the skin lines that are advertised during international events now contribute part of that revenue into a shared global revenue pool, which, they basically after the revenue all goes in, they will give it to the teams. This is different than the set stipends that were given to teams previously, where there was kind of like a known amount for being a franchise team that was inside of the team agreement. I know you're not going to be able to comment on this, Papa, because you are in fact bound by confidentiality clauses on this. But I'm telling people in a theoretical universe where, now we've changed this fundamental model, because you have to remember last year was the year that all of this, like the new contracts went into effect. Right. And so Riot has drastically changed the payment model because they are trying not to lose money. It's my understanding. And again, you don't have to comment on this, Papa. It's my understanding from talking to not Riot, I know you're watching this, from not talking to PapaSmithy, from talking to other people, guess who they are, that basically the mandates from Tencent have come down. And they have said, you need to cut costs on this esports nonsense. And so that's why you guys are seeing a lot of the changes that are taking place from the business.
So, by the way, that's one area I do have mild sympathy for Riot. Okay, you have to reverse all these bad trends and build the viewership, but you got less money to do it.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, chance to be a fine thing. What the fuck?
And it's my understanding that Daddy Tencent is doing this. They're taking a more direct hand in this. And you can see Tencent themselves doing it, such as they were responsible for the LPL English broadcast. That wasn't Riot's responsibility. They weren't paying for that. And that has been cut by Tencent directly. And then Riot opted to pay for that for a limited amount of time afterwards before kind of kicking it back to the fans. So as a team, Papa, now you have less competition now with the LCS size reducing, but sponsorships are still tough to get in this space. Esports Winter still has had a chilling effect, right? How is it operating as a business within the world of LoL esports right now? Part of this isn't Riot's fault at all. It's like the realities of Esports Winter we can partially blame Riot too, but it was also all the other developers' fault. It was a collective failure. It
was also the economic reality of kind of like the value of money and like
and also
the reason venture
interest
capital
rates.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why VC dried up mostly, guys, was because when interest rates were close to zero, there wasn't a good way to actually invest money a lot of the time outside of taking these like venture capital fund moonshots on tech companies. When interest rates rose, there became much more safe places to slowly and with less risk, grow the value of your investment. And so that's why we saw dialing back. And then also the rise, obviously the collapse of the promise of esports, the collapse of the viewership of esports. It was really the lack of explosive growth that was anticipated, just like a tech company. People thought like, here's our bet that esports is going to become the next NFL, just like this new company is going to become the next Uber or whatever. And when that failed to materialize, at least at the rate that people wanted to, they put their investments elsewhere. And now it's all AI, venture capital. What little there is left is all tied up in only AI, basically. But without that growth, a lot of the sponsors, haven't been willing to come back. With Overwatch League, we had Coca-Cola, and there was this bet from the sponsors as well that this was going to be something that had grown. And it, in fact, arguably has decreased on the whole.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to look at when the LCS franchising was. It was the middle of 2017. It was obviously when, and I wasn't around for this, so I can at least speak from the outside of how I observed it. It was obviously it was around the time Overwatch was trying to try to get franchise partners as well. And if you try to perspective take where we are in 2017 and what kind of like headwinds there are, like at that time, the MLB AM kind of platform and media rights was like the BAMTech deal was either announced or about to be announced. That was
for context for people who don't know about this part of League of Legends history. MLB, as in Major League Baseball, had their own media platform, and it was announced that there was a $300 million media rights deal between Riot and this platform. This deal never materialized. Disney bought MLB, the BAMTech platform, and then nothing happened. And so I'm not sure if any money was actually ever paid to anyone as a result of that deal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But obviously the actual platform never launched, right? So at that point, you're buying a franchise spot, as Twitch viewership is only growing, with media rights, one of the core kind of like revenue things for any sport, basically baked, or at least, they either knew about it. It was either announced or it was about to be announced. Like it would have been at the water cooler, right? And the categories that were available, the most traditional, the idea that your franchising is going to give, both endemics and non-endemics more confidence in investing and partnering with you. So partnerships in esports is only going to swell at that time. Obviously, a lot of people are getting into sponsoring esports teams for the first time in 2018-19, knowing that teams are going to have a minimum amount of games and be relevant for years and not be relegated. Like the headwinds, you're kind of setting a multi-year partnership. I don't know if that was ever publicly released, how long that partnership was. Like that was a very different world to the new model, which is the GRP model that all regions have taken on. The easiest way to explain is that obviously a lot of those categories didn't bear fruit. Like there was no media rights deals anymore. And if there were, the economics would have been different with that original
on top of
scenario.
That, without media rights deals, Riot was internally creating their own streaming platform, which during the Riot layoffs a couple years ago was actually canceled. So the new promise to teams was that, hey, we're going to have our own platform, right? And this is going to be much more lucrative because it's a first-party product than Twitch, and that went away as well.
Yeah, so given that the media rights landscape didn't happen, Riot still actually has some very, very impressive partnership deals, league-wide with big partners, so at least they have that. But in terms of like new and bringing new endemics to the space, because you guys were talking about bringing in new logos. We've actually been very lucky this year and have unannounced at the moment, but soon to announce like big new partnerships we're proud of. But that doesn't seem to be a very common thing, and maybe that's just because of our recent success. I know you guys are always kind of bringing in new partners too, so it's a different world than 2017 for sure. So when you look at what Riot is now saying to teams, the GRP model, it's, hey, we really know how to sell skins in our game. That's like something we're good at. We've always been good at that. How about we create certain skins timed around significant esports moments, and you guys help sell those to your fan base, because coming from you, it's going to be like a different voice than coming just from us. That's like absolutely a believable thing. And I do think that the current model of let's let esports teams sell League of Legends is actually a very meaningful change that sounds subtle to most viewers, because actually teams don't have like we can't just sell Teemo shirts, right? Like that's like Riot IP. So like selling League of Legends, like TSM I don't think was selling League of Legends. They were selling TSM, if you know what I mean. But TSM could have sold League of Legends, right? It's their fucking game. It's their main game. And now at least the incentives are aligned in that like FlyQuest is selling League of Legends, and that's part of our marketing requirements of our GRP pool based, in-game sales based kind of like mechanic. Like that's, at least those things are aligned. So at least that's like, to me, the model, this model does make intuitive sense, but of course the specifics and other numbers higher and lower enough, like we can always do with more money. That's just like a reality, right? But I think that Riot is thinking about things in the right way. And it's a model that you can look at and be like, skins are going to continue to sell for years. Selling skins in 2029 is a real thing. Whereas if we were still media rights based, the media rights deal isn't coming, seems to be the reality there.
By the way, being as this isn't just the state of LCS, it is the state of League of Legends, I actually do think the T1, let me see, it's the head of business development, the guy you were referring to, Monty. I actually think his statement at the end is super significant. I'll just read it out quickly. It says, only a handful of teams are currently profitable, but profitability is not impossible. Still, high player salaries and content production costs have locked teams into a high-cost structure. The pressure to deliver short-term results is immense. In the long run, teams must move beyond sponsorship dependency. You're fucking T1 saying this, by the way, and establish, this is the key phrase, B2C based revenue models, which people don't know is when the business sells directly to the customer. So essentially, in this case, things like skins and merch and other things you can have, essentially what every other sport lives off. Now, what I think is so telling about that paragraph is this is the guy whose team won the World Championship in the last few years. This is the guy who has the most watched team in League of Legends, and he isn't from the LCS with all failing viewership. He is from the region that has doubled their viewership from a few years ago, that has higher peak viewership, that has more viewing hours even. They've even managed to do it over things. They've done all the things that LCS couldn't do. And what he's essentially saying, in my opinion there, if I break down that statement and read between the lines, the first part is basically saying, T1, the most successful team, we aren't even close to profitability. No. I would even take a guess that when he says teams can be, he means some guy, middle of the pack team that's perfectly min-maxed it, and they've paid not much salaries because they don't have great players, but they ended up having a decent roster, and they've gotten just high enough and just enough things. So essentially, if you want the CS equivalent, if everyone remembers a couple of years ago, the ENTs of League of Legends in this analogy. By the way, it's always a bad sign when the most successful team in terms of business is not the fucking one that wins all the World Championships and has the biggest, most viewed player and all the sponsors.
And then Big lastly, was also good about doing that as well.
There's another good one. And then here's another thing. If you are yourself T1 and you're saying we really have to move beyond sponsorship dependent, like, bro, you are fucking T1. Everyone currently thinks, every idiot on Reddit, that you don't have to worry about money because you're just can access the big T1 or billion Scrooge McDuck vault, which isn't even true at all, by the way. Every business was on some level justify itself, if not at least as marketing or some complementary business. So I found that to be very significant, because to me that last sentence isn't even for fans or even me reading it. That last sentence basically says, yeah, everything PapaSmithy just said is accurate, and I like the direction it's going in. But we can't wait to just sell our world skins and sell the odd legacy skin. Basically, give us access tomorrow to make our own carrier product, to make our own faker thing, to make our own. Here's an idea. Maybe it could be like a hub sub-site within the client. If you're a T1 fan, you go to and you buy T1 gear, and it has the YouTube videos embedded in it as a fan club. There's a million things which I assume all these people with the creative juices would get flowing if they had access to. But unfortunately, it feels like they're just really slowly opening that valve to let the odd drip out, and they're essentially saying we need we need the dam to break tomorrow.
I mean, there is a way for there to be a circuit for League of Legends to be incredibly profitable for esports teams. Like, of course,
the international events
exist.
are very popular, are profitable, right, Papa? Like
if I think about, if I think about kind of like what the circuit could be, then of course there's ways for a small amount of teams in every region to be very profitable.
Yes,
and the game, but that's like a choice, right? Like, I think from my experience with Riot for the longest time, and maybe they can't solve for this anymore, their goal was the more people that can be gainfully employed in League of Legends esports in the world, the better, which is absolutely a noble way to look at it, right?
It's why, Papa, instead of having giant prize pools like Dota, they had stipends for basic pros. They did
now they don't have any prize pools.
The funnel was different. Yes.
So like that was what they were solving for before, which like is a noble thing to solve for. But like at that, I remember I was fighting with Riot in 2020 about Tier 3 League of Legends, because I'm I love Tier 2 and Tier 3. I always care about developmental platforms, and the viewpoint from Riot was success in Tier 3 was the most possible players earning a full-time salary from playing Tier 3 League of Legends. And I was on the other side being like, is that good? Like, is that progress? Like, is that actually like the win condition, or is that what we should be solving for? That seems very fanciful, like was kind of how I felt at that time. And so there's absolutely a different type of circuit. The question of like, what would League of Legends be like with a CS like circuit is always going to be a fun thing to ask. Whether it was Arnold or the T1 business developer, I think this was Arnold. He even says similar things of like, if all categories were allowed to be sold, it's well known that Riot kind of like picks and chooses which categories teams are allowed to take. Hard liquor, for example, is not an allowed category. If Korean teams could have soju sponsors, that would probably be pretty lucrative. There's an intuitive link there, but that's not allowed.
Jinro is the largest alcohol manufacturer in the world, guys. So yes, it would be very lucrative for the Korean teams to have soju sponsors.
And this is all stuff that we think about and like soothsay on all the time, right?
And again, by the way, that would also fit in with what we're saying about it's an adults game as well. Like, by the way, if you could have Faker in a really baller, classy commercial for like soju, that would sell like hotcakes.
Like, let's say McDonald's commercials right now in Korea, by the way.
So if people don't know, like obviously North American Counter-Strike is not in a great place on any metric. There isn't a team winning events, and there isn't like a lot of teams that are paying livable wages either. If Team Liquid was 3 or 4 players out of 5 North American and winning tournaments, but there was only 2 other teams that were paying kind of like livable wages, but there was like, wow, they're winning, why can't I win? Like, if there was a lot of people playing online tournaments in ESCA, and kind of like there was a lot of viewership for NA domestic games, kind of like MLG 2012 vibes in League of Legends, is that a good ecosystem? By Riot's definition before, the answer would have been no. Whereas for me, I'm like, but like a lot of people are excited about it. Theoretically, there's receptive eyes, probably without a lot of spending power, who are watching things. That's good for viewership metrics and YouTube shorts. And like, maybe over time, this will get where it needs to go. But like, that's never been what Riot was solving for.
Yeah, I mean, NA Counter-Strike kind of did go the same way as NA League, really. I mean, first of all, it was very similar in how it was constructed. A lot of the top streamers were the top players. Sometimes streamers went on to become pro players, like guys like Tarek and stuff, if you remember him from the No Shirt days. And like what ended up happening there, unfortunately, was a complete lack of commitment by the team owners. Like, what they started doing was they wanted to create franchise leagues before we ended up with franchise leagues and then pretend franchise leagues. But they wanted to create.
The joke is if Riot hadn't created franchise leagues, NA owners would have done it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But they did.
Yeah, and so you had that problem, and then the next issue was they would they would say, oh, we'll have a team now for this event, and then as soon as there wasn't an immediate return on the investment, they would publicly go out and say things like, yeah, it's just not an economy for Counter-Strike. There's no way to make money on having a Counter-Strike team. I mean, complete bullshit, because we're doing it in Europe. They're just fucking nonsense. The problem with American team owners in every esport is they always want to do it on fucking easy mode. They want guaranteed revenue. They want access to all the top talent. They want other people's money to spend. By the way,
they were also driving that Ferrari themselves, Richard. Yeah. They had the Ferrari of all the insane sponsorships when Europe had like half the amounts. Yeah, they also pissed that away.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, they want a guaranteed league that they can never drop out of and will always be invited to and will always play. And it's like, guys, this is too much. This is super unrealistic. This isn't how sports operates. You might have a couple in America that maybe do meet 4 out of those 5 things, but even then, that's pushing it. And by the way, those ones all have strong, robust union protections for the players, unlike esports. But that's a sidebar. But anyway, the reason Counter-Strike in NA essentially died off was because, first of all, the org started pulling out and going, we regret that we will have to leave CS as we just can't make money from it. Then whenever a major came around, stick of money? Shit, okay, good. We might make $3 million for nothing, for just fielding a shit team. Let's get a team in again. And then they don't qualify and they go, 3 months later, sorry, we're out again. TSM did that a bunch. I don't know why anyone would be excited about TSM coming to Counter-Strike when TSM fumbled the #1 team in the world anyway, and just didn't give a fuck about the game except when it was a means to pay the bills. And then obviously ESL fucked over the up and coming American orgs by just literally stealing slots that they'd earned through qualification and then selling them to European people so they could create a franchise league, which was outrageous. So that's pretty much stymied the feeder talent. And then obviously all of the people that had personality that could play at a pro level, they realized they could just be streamers now and make more money for less effort. And eventually go on to be co-streamers of all of our big events now. And they can just sit there and smoke Zaza all day and just get paid for it. So why the fuck not? So that's what that was essentially the implosion of CS and NA, along with some other things. And that's pretty much what happened to League. And it was right there. Right there. You had all of the elements you needed to succeed. And again, it's like a combination of short-sightedness, avarice, and just, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with North American owners when it comes to esports. I can't figure them out. I don't understand how their brains operate in such a ridiculous way compared to everywhere else in the world.
The only thing I think about these days that might be tangentially related, Richard, is obviously I always want to look at success stories in other regions and try to understand what I can learn and bring back to my org or to my region. And the brands you look at, there's T1 that obviously is like a unique unicorn case of like incredible legacy across all competitive gaming in Korea for 25 plus years. The biggest, a player bigger than the game, et cetera, et cetera. So it's hard to like take too much from them apart from like really, the brand building they did around ZOFGK was very, very smart. Again, playing into idol culture in their country. But the more relevant ones or more recent ones are Carmine Corp, Mad Koi, and Lost Returns. And I do think that one thing that North America struggles with is, or at least one thing that I can't recreate, is having a French fan base with French communication and this like geolocated fan base, or at least like language separated fan base that really resonates with a project that like is very much like their market is segmented in a very intelligent way. I think market segmentation for LCS teams is super, super hard, right? You're all in LA. All the events are, offline in LA. The LA market is very saturated. Also, the LA attention span, in a TikTok generation is going to be what is the new hotness, like what you're competing with an unlimited amount of global content in English and also local opportunities, and the opportunity cost of watching LA esports is extremely high compared to kind of like the authenticity of big streamers speaking to their own market in a way that's like very, very, very much segmented. You guys probably don't know this. One of the most interesting things I learned was about the rise of French esports and Kameto, towards the end of that story. And what I didn't know is back in the day, I'm going to cast your mind back to 2012, 2013 esports. If you guys were watching League of Legends at all, you'd remember that CLG's streaming channel on Owned 3D was shared between the different players, right? Like Double Lift would do a 4-hour, stream, and then he would host, or at least I don't know, hosting didn't exist, but he'd be replaced by Big Fat LP. It would be replaced by Chauster. Like it was like, and then at that time, it led to the points where you guys probably remember when like, oh, no one wants to stream when Bjergsen's streaming and things like that. But specifically for CLG, it was very much there's one channel, you don't get to control who's on it. Like if you're not in the right time zone, you're not going to get Double Lift because obviously he's asleep and this next CLG streamer has inherited it. What I learned was that actually the French kind of esports the French esports never left that, and like streamer culture has been like that the whole time. It wasn't like everyone had their own stream. There was this kind of like radio channel kind of version of it where you like flowed from one to the other. And that's why Kameto was able to bring so many fans to League of Legends, because he just had this fan base that was experienced being transferable to whatever kind of like was like exactly the water cooler. Like that Kameto stream was the water cooler of esports, and it happened to be League of Legends. Like I don't know if anybody has brought more esports fans to a older product than Kameto bringing French fans to League of Legends in 2021 too. End of 20. Like that's. If you could find that number, it would be tens and tens of thousands of people he has brought to a mature esport. That's super, super cool. Like the latest example of that would be like Heated Rivalry bringing new fans to NHL. Theoretically, no one knows how that's going to go, but like that's like bigger culture moment translating into viewers of like an old project. And I look at kind of like, because we'll use K-Corp as an example, and obviously Lucio went to K-Corp recently, and I'm sad about that. But regardless, like K-Corp is like a really interesting example to look at, because recreating that when you can't market segment in the same way is hard. I actually felt this on the product side. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced on the product side, but on the products, I guess Flashpoint was probably competing with the ESL Pro League at some point, and there was probably some like, kind of like,
why they stole the spots?
Yeah, I just meant like Europe versus North American time zone kind of stuff there. But the reason why I bring it up is I used to cast the OPL when I was doing like the Australian League while I was casting the Chinese League when I was in Australia, just because we did both projects. And like, why would anyone watch the Australian League when they could watch the LCK at exactly the same time in English, and it was normalized to watch it in English? They'll just watch the better league. And I think that sort of stuff for North America to segment is hard. And my latest shower thought, I don't know how you guys will react to this. Maybe it's cope, maybe it's smart.
By the way, just as an aside, I do love, this is like, I'm getting a perverse kink vibe out of this. Remember what I just said earlier? 10 years ago, the same conversation on this show would be, how are Europeans ever going to catch up to North America?
Yeah,
because we're segmented, and people in France, for example, can only access a French version,
you're right.
Whereas actually Jack from Cloud9 can access the whole continent, so he's going to win forever. And the joke is you're now making the opposite complaint of like, bloody hell, get me into a tiny market when there's only 4 people that ever stream, and they have all the viewership. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Keep going. Please.
There's probably a learning that can be reverse applied here, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm ahead of the curve. I'm just trying to look at the curve. Is that
I find it humorous? So
is that one thing that I've been it's like affected me, so I probably see it when other people don't. Is like my LCS winning team was the team that had no North American players or coaches on it, right? And everyone was like, basically like, fuck this, people hated it, if you know what I mean. Like people really did, it was really not popular when it was framed that way of like, this is a problem, basically, was the way it was framed. I find it so fascinating that Carmine Corp has only 2 European players this year, 1 French player. Obviously, the French player happens to be a generational talent, which is very, very helpful. And the owner is, you know, a goat of French culture, even above esports culture. Like, he's like a massive celebrity in France. But there's no like, oh, they like swapped Bussio's residency to European just to make this lineup work with 2 Koreans and a 3rd import and a Swedish person and a French person. They're still, nope, they're coming into our team. We are Carmine Corp. These are like our rituals. This is what kind of players we bring. This is what we expect from you. It's very much like a fan base that's like, as long as you like march to the beat of our drum, we are super down to roll with you, is like how it looks at. And my suspicion on that, rather than just sitting there and being salty, because that's not productive, is I feel like in the early days of North American League, it would be like, I want to watch TSM at Worlds, and if TSM doesn't make it to Worlds, I'm not going to watch Worlds. But over time, with, you know, the legacy brands you guys are talking about, TSM, CLG, etc., falling away, and new teams trying to build a brand and not being able to take advantage of trends or kind of like segment a market, etc., it instead became, I'm a North American fan and I want to see North American players do well at Worlds, and I'm not seeing enough of those, and I don't have any allegiance to any specific team. Like, I would assume that a lot of LCS fans in 2025 compared to 2015 have no favorite team, and they're just supporting North America, and thus the representation comes to the front in a certain way. Because it's like, I don't know, the names and logos change every year. Wish there was more North American players when I watched the international event. Is very different to like, I'm a TSM ultra and I just want to see TSM do well, and if you sign for TSM, I'm going to ride with you right to the end. Like the sort of vibe you get from like, you'll know this reference, Thorin, the Man United guy, what's his name, Mark Goldbridge, you know, where it's very much like, you know, like, I don't agree with this signing, but he's Man United now, so I'm riding with him to the end. All right, fuck this guy when he leaves, you know? Like, there just isn't that kind of fandom in North America, and I see that as a problem, and it's something that I've identified. It's something that I want to fix. It's something that I want to try to do better about for FlyQuest in 2026, but it's a very, very tricky thing to do, and I see it as like an aspirational thing to be like, how can I, without language advantage or market segmentation, segment a market? And I hope fans can hold us to a high standard of trying to do that. Like, if we just don't do it and then just wait, then yeah, we could win and thus be popular, but you want your brand to lead to ride or dies that currently I think are harder and harder to get in the English speaking world.
By the way, one thing you've nailed there, actually, I'll tell you right now, me and Monty do this thing where we just tell you what we do and what our techniques are. Just everyone else thinks we're dickheads, so they don't copy the technique. And therefore, the joke is LFN has 1 million times more sponsors than the fucking LCS broadcast, which probably has more viewership. So one of the things that you're talking about here is, you said it all there, mate, right? So the viewership of LEC itself it also relies on things like Cadril turning stream on. The success of MCoy of KC is like Ibai, it's Kometo, right? The reason why that works, the reason why you create zealots, ultra fans who aren't just fans even like, of this player. The joke is that, like you're saying, that in North America, someone was a fan of Doublelift, so they followed him from CLG to TSM to Team Liquid. They didn't give a fuck about TSM when he left. The joke is, as you said, I think even if Kalist left KC, they'd sort of go, you know what, I wish you well, but sort of fuck you. In fact, who's coming in now? Who we got now in KC? You're right, they're loyal to KC more than Kalist, who's French, even if they're a French fan. I think what you're nailing here is, people don't want to be fans of faceless corporations. They want to be connected in via the personality of Ibai, of Cadril, of Kometo, and then that gives them a reason to care. Because as you say, this is the key thing I think here. I understand totally why Riot fucked with MCoy's VCT spot if Ibai isn't the one turning the stream on, because actually that is what people on some level are getting into the game via and watching for. They're not just watching for the game and hopefully Ibai's there too. I think that is a key aspect, whereas unfortunately a lot of actually, like I said earlier, they did originally in Riot want it to, you are a fan of the LCS and you're just a fan of, and it's the old old American sports thing of like, you're just a fan of the team and whoever's it's like in the modern day, people don't connect in the same way. People, by the way, the reason this is obvious to me is coming from my sports background in England. Like when I was a boy, it doesn't matter how shit like the Sunderland team is, mate. Everyone will be a fan of Sunderland in that area. When I got to be like 30, so 50 years ago, when I was 30, every kid, even in our town, would have a Messi shirt on, and I'd be going, are you Spanish or something? Are you from Argentina? No, it's just a local kid, because the modern kids just follow the trends. Yeah. They follow whoever they follow the pop. Yeah, that's what they're attached to. They're not attached to the team in the same way. In fact, they do the opposite. They'll support the team if it's good. If it isn't, then fuck it. I'm not even from there here in that sense, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like we call them obviously glory supporters in like mainstream sports, and it's obviously a practice that's generally frowned upon. You know, like but Duncan will have seen it as well in school.
I haven't thought about the term glory fans in a long time, Richard, but you're right, actually,
Because that's the funny thing, bro. Back then, it was a diss if you were the Man United kid, but in our area in the North East. Now, everyone would be the Man United. Well, not now, but obviously they'd be the Man City fan.
Now everyone's the Man City fan. Arsenal fans, and it was incredible watching it kind of like happen, because, you know, obviously, again, I'm a Newcastle fan. Where I grew up, it was pretty much divided between, well, in the North East, I should say, it was pretty much divided between Newcastle, Sunderland, and Middlesbrough. It was kind of like a bit of a melange. Less Middlesbrough, and then I moved to Middlesbrough, and I was a Newcastle fan of Middlesbrough, which was lots of fun. But ultimately, when I was at school, I was watching like, you had the older generation of glory supporting Liverpool fans, and then it was the United fans, and then Chelsea got bought by Abramovich, and all the money started going into that team, and they started getting all these old like.
You never met a Chelsea fan before that. You suddenly were everywhere. I remember.
A fucking Chelsea fan in the northeast of England. Are you fucking dizzy? Like, oh, what the fuck is this? But there was a load of Chelsea fans, and then, you know, and a few Arsenal fans popped up, because obviously they played fantastic football. And now it's like not really thought of as a thing in football. People generally just support, you know, the team that like they vibe with, and just coincidentally the team they vibe with as a child will very often happen to be the best team, right? Now, when you buy the ticket and take the ride with a sports team, though, it's great if you pick them when you're a kid and you're winning every week, and you get to go into school and say fuck you to all of your friends and all of that stuff. It don't last forever. You know, I fucked myself in the late 80s, but because my NFL team is Raiders. I picked the then
You picked an Raiders. NFL team in the 80s as a British person?
In late 80s, there was a big push to sell NFL to Brits.
Didn't know that.
And it used to be on Channel 4. And they partnered up with a popular tabloid called the Daily Mirror, which was basically what working class people read, as opposed to the Sun, which, you know, they're scumbags.
You have to realise Richard's origin story is a bit like the movie Cable Guy, if you ever saw it.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
So why did you choose them? Was it because they were winning?
Because all of the rich kids had 49ers jerseys, because that was the team at the time.
Got it.
And they were the glory supporters, and so they were all walking around school with the Joe Montana on their back.
I chose my NFL team for a stupid reason too. I'll be interested to hear why Duncan chose his, but
what's yours?
In Australia, I was at college right as HDTV for broadcast started, and we had like an HD projector or something, and like you would turn on the terrestrial channel. We didn't have cable, and and almost nothing was in HD. You know, everything was in like 480i or whatever, like low res kind of like stuff was there. Actually, the only thing that was broadcast in HD was the NFL in the mornings in Australian time zones. So I actually chose the New Orleans Saints because their stadium looked amazing in HD. Like, that was the reason I chose them. I was like, wow, that looks cool. It justifies the purchase of this projector, I guess. And then Drew Brees seemed cool, and they actually won the year later. But I just chose it because of how the stadium looked, like an aesthetic choice, which flies against how I choose my other teams. But that was just like the random variables that led to an Aussie choosing an NFL team at all. I mean, Duncan, do you have a team? Or I know you like quarterbacks and stuff like that.
Here's the thing. I don't have a team.
So you're the problem child, kind of like,
I am.
Oh my God.
That's because I came to the NFL later in life. So the beauty is I'm only loyal to my family, my kid, and my people. Beyond that, fuck yeah, I only want to see the best player. So the second the joke is, I just watched the Steelers this season because Aaron Rodgers went there.
Yeah, see, he says this, but he always had a soft. Basically, first of all, he's a massive Aaron Rodgers fan.
I know that.
And second of all, he always had a soft spot for the Packers up for that.
Yeah, but now I hate them for
reason.
betraying him. So fuck them. There you go. I'm also incredibly spiteful. I don't know if anyone that not
never came across.
But to put a bow on the like the 100 Thieves KC thing, it's like I look at that and I'm like, fuck, we failed at our like social media marketing content strategy to not build 100 Thieves League of Legends fandom that would withstand kind of these like, you know, Excel spreadsheet nationality things. And I look at KC and be like, I'm jealous of what they've been able to achieve, you know? Like, that's how I look. I'm not like salty about it or anything. I'm like, fuck, that was the missed opportunity that we did that didn't allow us to success to be received. Because I'll be honest, like 100 Thieves kind of like, you know, obviously I left them a year later, but in general, the like bittersweetness of winning and not being appreciated for it definitely was one of the reasons that influenced the changes of spending in League of Legends for the org. You know, people want to be loved, people want to be supported and things like that. And so that I take ownership of that, even if like my job was not like marketing officer or something like that.
This message is sponsored by Raycon. Now that the holidays are over, it's the perfect time to upgrade your gear for the new year, especially because many of you might be getting into a new fitness routine. So you might want to check out Raycon's Essential Open Earbuds. Now, what are these? These are earbuds that wrap around your ears and sit on top so you can still hear everything that's going on around you while still getting delightful sound. They stay on very tightly. I've worn them at the gym, and so you don't have to worry about that. If you guys want a more conventional earbud, they also have the Essential Everyday Earbuds. These they go inside your ear canals, and they have active noise cancellation and awareness mode, so you can toggle them just by pushing a button on the left earbud to switch that mode, either cancel out all that noise. It's very effective. I've used it on planes and subways and had just a lovely time listening to my music. You can also, of course, listen to your favorite podcasts here, like the Four Horsemen. Raycon has had over 3 million customers, and the sound quality is just as good as the way more expensive brands, but they're half the price because they're not paying for all that retail markup. They sell directly to you. And if you don't like them for any reason, they have a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you can go ahead and return them. There is very little, actually no risk here at all. So the Essential Open Earbuds are here to help crush your New Year's goals. Go to buyaraycon.com/horsemenopen. That's plural, MEN open, to get 20% off site-wide. That's anything you want. So thank you, Raycon, for sponsoring us here on the Four Horsemen.
I've got an angle I want to throw out there, and I want to see, Monty, what you think of this. If it doesn't go anywhere, don't worry about it. We can skip and go to something else. But I think this is relevant. This is also relevant to recent news in League of Legends. Oh, my Lord, Monty, did I laugh. How rich is this bro? That in the last few months, there's rumours there's going to be League 2, except it's just like CS2. It'll just be a transition from League currently with the skins to 2. Now, remember, Monty, again, I must have been in Guantanamo Bay there being tortured because I was told for the last 10 years we didn't need a League 2, we didn't need a better graphical UI, we didn't need to update the client, that these things were all fine, and in fact, you're an idiot if you said these things. So I'll tell you what I think is rich as fuck about this, Monty, is I'll give everyone a quick lesson. Only Rich will appreciate it, maybe, because it's a really old example. When Source came out in 2005 or whatever it was, one of the main motivating reasons, seeing what all the Source people said, why we had to switch to Source wasn't it's better in these ways. It's because, guys, we're not going to get people to watch an old-ass video game that was coded in 1999, right? Let me just put that in context. CS Retail came out in 2000. This was 2005, 5-year span, right? League of Legends came out in 2009, and more officially, like let's say like 2010, 2011. The Esports circuit began technically in 2011. We're talking about it's 2026 now, and you're going to go to League 2. That's how long you have squandered that chance to do an update. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is real news, but I'm going to tie it to an angle you might not want to run with, I'll just do it myself, is I have always told Monty another area area League of Legends was absurd in throwing away their advantage is compared to games like Counter-Strike, which you will know all of everyone in this call, you don't have to play Counter-Strike now to still be able to watch it. In fact, there are people from other esports who've never played Counter-Strike who watch it, and in fact, it is probably the number one game that's a gateway for general esports fans to go, wow, kind of cool. A bit like what Onipixel did with Valorant recently, where he discovered another game that he could sort of get into quickly without knowing the minutiae and enjoy the bigger picture. So when you're in this scenario, one of the things that I think is really mad is you have if you come to League of Legends, essentially what I was going to say was they used to have an enormous player base in League, and the actual, even though we had crazy viewership like 500k, that was nothing compared to the giant power of people playing the game. The conversion of people watching the game wasn't very good, and I always told Monty, as someone who's an outside person coming in, but very knowledgeable about esports and watching esports, like I watched games like Broodwar that I didn't play at a high level. I'm not just someone from Counter-Strike and Quake. The most jarring thing about League always was how old the client always fucking looked, even with that shitty little graphical update, whatever it was, 2016 or something, where they made the Rift look a bit better. It was always really janky, and the worst thing about the game was the visibility of what is happening and the intuitive feel of what is, like, for example, I used to tell Monty, bro, a fan at home will never know Mykles was activated. They'll never be able to see it. They'll never know that won the fight, Kerrier doing a Mykles onto this guy right there. That isn't a big enough... Meanwhile, some spells would have a massive graphical thing that would just dog shit that did nothing. And there was no rhyme or reason. Dota, by the way, itself is mega outdated. But at least they've done some updates on the engine. And at least their game, I would actually say, I think it's a lot more intuitive to figure out when someone does the BKB or does an ult, etc. Yeah. I've always thought that is one of the hardest things about League, because unlike games like Counter-Strike, it isn't easy to instantly see what's happening. I always have even pointed out, this is just a random side thing, but to show how difficult this is. I'll tell you how everyone can get the experience of the information overload and how hard it is to pass. Does anyone remember back in the day, again, like 10 years ago, some of the early highlight clips in League, people did this thing that sadly didn't become a trend, where when you would show a highlight of a real game, but it was like a 10-minute highlight package, what you would do is at the beginning of each highlight segment, you would pause the screen for 1 second and really quickly put a box around who I'm meant to watch. So I'm not just watching it.
Team fight breakdown and stuff like that.
Yeah. That stuff like that was really...
That was a skill.
League's never had anything like this.
That was a skill, Duncan.
League's never had this.
I know that, like, as a caster, I don't know if Monty... I'm sure Monty intuitively did the same thing, but something I always kind of tried to do is when a team fight was coming up, I would intuitively know, like, whose life is the most important, what skill is the most important. And so I would always key the viewer in the replay. I would almost start almost every replay with watch the Twitch, because when the Twitch chooses to open up or not is going to decide the fight, kind of thing. Like, that's because like you're saying, like, it's not quite Overwatch where literally it's like, color being vomited on a screen. Like, you do have to still say, like, look here, so I'll give you the example. You'll see how it will play out.
Here's the obvious analogy. When I watch the line of scrimmage in the NFL, another incredibly information-dense game, I watch where the ball's going, don't I? I don't have to worry about what this guy's doing. What if there was no ball and I had to intuitively know where to watch? As you're saying, essentially, I need you to live translate that for me. But the game itself has a lot of problems, I still think, in that regard. So now they're potentially going to update and do graphical thing. I hope that is an area they are actually genuinely going to, like, put a lot of effort into, because I do think that's another area where League, I think, essentially got a lot of its viewership from a tiny conversion from an enormous success of a casual game. But I think it's going to be very hard to build up viewership without certain things like that.
Readability in game has also gotten worse with more champions. And I think the readability of League of Legends has deteriorated over time. I wouldn't say in 2012 it was that hard to watch.
Are you ready for something mad? You might not know, Monty, because you haven't been in the game as much. Or people have even said this actually happened thanks to fucking Papa's player, inspired. The other joke is even modern pros sometimes don't know what an old champion does, bro. There's too many champions. So there's actual pro players that when Nunu was played by Inspired didn't know what the fuck was going on. They were like top Korean pros, mate. Like, there was people who were like legendary players. So there's another problem. If I wasn't a fan in 2011, what happens when someone plays Teemo in the game, mate?
So, come here.
How do I immediately figure that out? That's a problem we have as a sport. Remember, you don't have that in the NFL. There's nothing.
I think League of Legends solved from the start for novelty, i.e. like fast balance changes, lots of costume changes. I will say, to your point, Duncan, there's some new skins where literally like set looks exactly like Udyr. You know what I mean? Like, I look at it and I'm like, because you guys remember back in the day, it used to be like, this skin is banned because, like, the Blitzcrank hook is invisible, or like this, Vladimir's too small on this skin. Like, I do think we've kind of like moved past that and we're just solving for sales, which is what it is. But coming back, I think League is always, because like that, the thing that League had is like, I remember sitting with you guys, I think even you were there in Duncan in like 2014, and being like, is League the first forever game? Because like they very much didn't want to release, a true change, and there has been seismic graphic updates in the game that did not involve a name change. Like that has happened, not for a long time now. So this next
they're not changing the name for what it's worth.
So to all of that, what I would say is, I think that League of Legends like found a way to use novelty to get a lot of in-game purchases happening. And then the trade-off of focusing on novelty, i.e., I can watch Dust 2 games in Counter-Strike 2 years ago when I hadn't been following Counter-Strike, and it's the game I played at a LAN cafe with my friends in Dubai in 2001. And it's like, oh, it's Dust 2. I remember that. If you take a 2-year break from League of Legends and come back, you're like,
yeah,
even the characters I remember aren't even doing exactly the same things I remember.
Well, especially now with the seasons, Papa, the fact that they introduced all these new objectives, and like it's crazy.
And then the plates changed.
I would posit, not knowing this, never told this by a Riot executive, that like if you told them like, hey, you sold for novelty and you got lots more in-game, purchases, but the esport was way less readable, and when you churn from the game, which is like the game, the like game development phrase of like, no longer playing it regularly or not logging in for a long time, you like churn hard. It's hard to come back. It's hard to come back and play. It's hard to come back and watch. I think they probably would have been happy with their choice. Like they backed a horse in that race, but the horse definitely hurts the readability of the esport a lot. That's why you need good casters to translate it.
It's kind of a weird one, because Dota went through a very similar like overhaul. Like they made the map 30% bigger. They added a new objective called Tormentors. They added a new mechanic as it relates to
all my Dota knowledge is from 2004.
They updated the engine
Dota,
too.
Right? So
yep. It's certainly since Papa was paying it.
21 years. A lot's changed.
They also gave every hero in the game an innate ability.
Okay.
They also gave everyone in the game a new position for an item called a shard, which gives them an ability. They also gave them these things called facets, which some heroes have 3, and it fundamentally changes the archetype and build path, theoretically speaking. Some are dog shit. And it's doing that and still releasing new heroes. And yet, bizarrely, well, first of all, it as Duncan said, it doesn't have the readability problems League does. But bizarrely, everybody seems to just be on board with it. Like, you will get the players that like kind of malign, oh, it's not old Dota. You've got kind of a little groundswell of a movement, like what people wanted
Dota
for
Classic
World of
kind of
Warcraft. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Dota Classic is a very real whispered thing in certain communities. Whether or not Valve would ever do that, I doubt. But I mean, why not? I mean, if it's a way to make money, but it'll probably never happen. But anyway, the fans of the game are just like, yeah, okay, cool, And I don't know if it's because of the way things are implemented or if it is just the fundamental readability. But people dip in and out of competitive Dota all the time, typically around the TI cycle. And you can maybe even argue TI isn't the spectacle it used to be, because all the fucking prize money fetishists don't fucking rubberneck now that it's got just a normal prize pool.
What was the prize pool of the last international?
It was like 3...
couple of million,
it was
not
like,
many now.
Yeah, it was like 3 million. Basically, what happened was the community said, we don't want you using FOMO tactics in the battle pass, and we want, and I shouldn't have to get to rank 400 to get a limited edition Arcana. So Valve went, oh, okay, cool, yeah, we'll make an esports themed one, and everyone went, I hate this. Where are my hats? where are my Arcanas? And nobody bought it. Nobody supported the teams, and the prize pool went down massively.
Yep.
So, but anyway, all of which is to say, it is weird that in League people are like definitely tapping the fuck out, and like I think a big part of it, and again, this is just to float it to you guys. Honestly, in any given patch in Dota, you still play about 70% of the heroes.
Right.
Well,
that's also a fundamental difference, Richard. Riot, no matter what they've said over the years, clearly do design the game the way they want it. In fact, when people do things like lane swaps, they alter the game so you can't do it as much. Whereas actually Dota, to me, has always been more hands-off in that sense too. Like, you figure it's a sandbox, you figure out what you want to do.
Architected, I would say, Duncan. Like, they're like, this is good now. You know what I mean? Like, they can make a series of changes and then mages are back when maybe they hadn't been played for a year. For sure.
Yeah, and look, I will say this: Dota has definitely been streamlined. They have the game design philosophy in Dota these days is definitely about minimizing toxicity in game by removing obscure traditional aspects of the game. Like everyone gets a courier now. It's not like how it used to be. Like back in the old days, right? If you were a POS 5, which is what I played, you never touched the courier. If anybody touched the courier within the first 4 minutes of the game when your mid needed to get regen out, you were griefing. I have to buy the courier. I used to have to buy the courier with my gold. I used to enable my mid to have a game, and I would finish a game typically with brown boots. that was POS 5 life back in the day. Now everyone has a courier, so no one argues about the courier, right? And it's like, so there's definitely like fundamental game decisions that have streamlined the Dota experience, but I think viewers, it's still unbelievably complex and has a lot of complexity that League doesn't. So it is interesting to see like people kind of like tapping out if they come back and go, what's a dragon? What's this? What's that? Fuck it. I'm okay. What's this big purple thing? Yeah, I'm out. You know what I mean? So it hasn't happened in Dota. Dota fans have kind of
enough about me when I watched Watchmen the movie.
That's a good reference.
So I mean, I do think like the upcoming stuff for League of Legends is an interesting development in terms of like, obviously I broke this a couple of years ago that they were working on massive visual updates, and that they were
they have to be.
I mean, they were delayed, but I think the question is, from a game perspective, does this actually get new people to play the game? My inclination is it doesn't, because the complexity of 170 champions, and also it's just MOBAs as a genre are not popular with young people. So how does that change?
Let me float. This is an idea. Could they ever do what Activision Blizzard did and go on Steam? Would they ever do it?
It's a long time.
I mean, the obvious problem there is it feels like the control elements, another term. Do they want to be part of someone else's ecosystem? Blah, blah, blah,
I mean, ultimately, Activision Blizzard had to bite the bullet after mismanaging.
Do you think it does anything? Do you think it does anything, Richard?
Like,
I feel
definitely.
I don't know if visibility in Steam is like
does
a limiting
Steam
factor
even want
for League of
them if
Legends.
it's a competitor to Dota? Would be my question.
I mean, put it this way: Valve don't give a shit. There's a million MOBAs on there. They'll never be as promoted as much. Like if Valve ever felt like they were worried about a competitor, they've literally got the front page of the store. They can do whatever they want with it. They can put Dota out there. Whenever a new hero's released, it's plastered all over there. But for me, I think it does do something. Increasingly, what's interesting about Steam is it is becoming a place where almost kind of a Discord integration thing where people are like segmenting into communities. They're using forums. They're talking to each other about the game on Steam, and people are playing the game because, we've all got a friends list. We've all got friends. You see your friend, the game pops up. Oh, well, he's playing this, is he? I mean, like I got all of my friends into Arc Raiders. I was playing that. It was like I was awaiting an event when it launched, so I didn't get to play it day one. But I'd seen the beta and I knew it was going to be fucking big and popping. As soon as I got back, I bought Arc Raiders, bought a couple of copies for my friends. And, now we got like a regular group of us all playing it together. I think discovery does matter because you're going to have people, by the way, who would never download the League of Legends client or never consider it. But then they're going to see their friends playing League of Legends popping up on Steam. They're going to see a League of Legends Steam page store. I think it would bring new players in.
I think it's an interesting thing because what we actually get in League right now is, new games effectively being added to the base League of Legends client. Like TFT is in League of Legends, right? And that's like a complementary project, but a auto battler is super different to a MOBA. And then in the current update, there's like, basically like a countries management, Civ Lite kind of like experience they're adding. And for sure, they want people to spend the maximum amount of time in the client possible. You play this like management sim and then you can't play anymore, you run out of energy, and it's like you should play a game of League of Legends or TFT before you can do more things. Like for sure they want to maximize the amount of time you're in the Riot Games client, and I'm trying to like compare that to being in the Steam client and buying new games, which of course they get a revenue share from, as to whether injecting that experience into Steam, like would the double friends list actually be a thing? Like, you're right in that it can't hurt. And I definitely have been around like general gaming enough to know, like, if a PC game comes out and it's not on Steam, did it even come out? Is like the reality.
Well, look at the relaunch of Hon, right?
Yeah.
I was super psyched about it. Then I heard it wasn't going to be on Steam. I ain't played it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I fucking love that game.
Games for Windows and all these other stores apart from the Epic Store, which again had Fortnite as an anchor client, like also never took off. So I totally get where you're coming from. Like there would be an amount of people, but yeah, I can't visualize that breaking through doors. And to the point of CS2, like again, like I played CS 1.5, 1.6, and then obviously I downloaded Steam and thus played a little bit of the very, very early days of Source and Go. But when I understood like the fundamental change of the smokes, right, which is like, to me, apart from the graphic update, like that's like a very big change, especially for the esport, shooting through smokes, the smokes, the rock, paper, scissors of smokes and mollies and grenades. I tried to think, could you do a change like that in League that like hits everybody who plays the game, that like would change the game in that way in a visual update that would like actually evolve the game rather than just a new fresh coat of paint? And I don't really know how you could recreate it, Like,
could change the map. I mean, if Dota can pull out a map change in fucking 2025, like it's pretty, that's the one thing that the classic 3-lane MOBA, that's the one thing you don't fuck with. I mean, as it is, like you look at what they're doing over at Deadlock, that's the true little interesting MOBA incubator that's going on right now, in my opinion. You look at lots of the stuff they're trying over there, they've made unreal wholesale changes to the game since it reluctantly came into the wink closed beta. With the vibes embargo that they put in place, like you can play it, just don't talk about it.
I mean, Monty, ideally, the League of Legends update launches the same time as the sequel to Arcane and something else.
But I mean,
that's what I mean. Yes,
I mean,
you're reading my mind.
It's clear that they're updating the client because the client needs to be updated, and they want to have it more. They want to bring in people, like you guys are saying, to more games. So it's not just like League and then ARAM. These kind of games, they're trying to add new mini games to it. They're trying to keep people in that ecosystem. But the question is, okay, so we turn League into other stuff, right? And we turned it into TFT, and that's all fine and dandy. But is it actually putting people in the primary game of League of Legends? What's the on-ramp? Well, they said they're going to increase, improve the tutorial, but it's still, the learning curve is insane. Like I said, MOBAs are just not popular with young people. There's no escaping that fact. Is that there isn't a MOBA that is being played by high school kids or college kids these days. It doesn't exist. So is this going to break through to them? And then that...
it might be one of the mobile ones. I mean, what about like Mobile Legends, Bang Bang and all that
maybe in Southeast Asia, yes.
Sure, it's very, very relevant there, yeah.
Sure. But the point is like, how do we get from this stage of how do you get new blood into the game of League of Legends when it's so hard at this point? It's so intimidating to approach.
Got another suggestion for you and you can borrow from Dota. What Dota have done, and I think this is fantastic. They did a crossover with the Monster Hunter games.
Yeah. Okay.
And so let's think about this conceptually. In MOBA, you have to grind to acquire skills. It takes lots of hours, lots of practice, lots of dedication. If you've ever played the Monster Hunter games, you know you can be in a boss fight for 2 fucking hours, right? And it resets because you didn't use a potion at the right time or whatever the fuck. And you're doing that to grind for bones and skins and hides and sinew to make armor so you can go and beat a bigger monster. Monster, right? And that's the gameplay loop in Monster Hunter. MOBA fans and Monster Hunter players, like, that's a marriage made in heaven. What a great bit of fucking what a great bit of market research Valve have done there. And so they've done this Monster Hunter crossover where you have Monster Hunter themed sets for all, most of the popular ones, like Sniper's in there and Anti-Mage is in there and Dragon Knight is in there, and the unpopular ones like Techies, he's in there. What people are doing is it's definitely raised the playing hours and the number of players playing, because you get dropped, depending on who you kill in the game, you get dropped items that you can then use to craft the sets. And there's like 4 or 5 sets per hero that they've selected. It's been fucking great. Now, and I guarantee there are, and I know because I have been playing some games where I have seen people coming in and they are not very good because, the matchmaking over in Dota is pretty shit. I'll say that. But I know it's bringing new people in. And so why can't League of Legends hook up with an IP? Like a Hon crossover would have been the one. Like, that would have been sick. Because everybody misses the fucking guys like Flint Beastwood and all the sick-named heroes and newer heroes. But, I mean, find another game.
Also, a crazy idea. Make, like, a small mini-game that could be connected to an IP. Let's call it Arcane or something crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Then if that gets popular, tie it in to make people come into the game. By the way, 2 quick things. One thing also I didn't set up earlier, but I personally am cynical. Who knew? It's only served me well for the last 15-plus years, just with League of Legends alone. But I cynically think the reason the shift magically changed to League Next, which remember was never going to exist ever, and we never had to look into it, that's not a problem, don't worry, is because I think genuinely Riot had the golden goose that was League, and Riot has never been the one who goes, so I've got a golden goose, better take care of that. They went, fuck the goose. It's now not even a golden one. No problem, I'm making another one. It's called Valorant. I'm going to be bigger than CS. Well, the joke is, all the lessons as to why Valorant isn't bigger than CS. By the way, this is how Riot will fuck up a good time without fail. You do realise, to this day, Counter-Strike is irrelevant in Korea, a massive viewing and playing country. Valorant last year was something like the 5th biggest game with 7% share in the PC banks. But Valorant isn't as big as CS, I would postulate, because Valorant has all the same scene problems and circuit problems that League of Legends does, because the same motherfucker is making the choices and decisions and using the same ideology and philosophy that caused League to stagnate and then die off. That's why their game still doesn't have more viewers than fucking CS majors and CS in general, which is supposed to have this inferior circuit. So one, I do think actually that when they realised Valorant wasn't the next League, they realised, fuck, we better get back to the one League we did have, which is League of Legends. And then the other thing I'll just throw out there is, we're being actually almost too idealistic by thinking about how to grow the pie again. I'll just put it in more stark terms and take everyone back in time a second. Wait a minute, Korea has more viewers now than it ever did in League of Legends. It is enormous, but the biggest Korean orgs that come from a world that was tiny with StarCraft comparatively and the amount of money that was in the space, they're saying the margins don't work. Now, the real problem here is they're begging you on both ends, like that T1 guy. One, please plug some of the leaks in the boat in this sense, the bath in this analogy, I guess. And 2, turn on some fucking taps. That's one of the things I think is mental, is if I said to you, we're starting tomorrow, PapaSmithy, I've got a Korean league for you, with a really popular game, still has 33% share in the PC bank, so all the kids are playing it still, still a healthy player viewership. I'm going to give you millions of views in terms of peak. I'm going to give you hundreds and hundreds of thousands in terms of average viewership. And you know what? We've got the best players in the world in this region too. Problem is, bad news. You've inherited that we're already paying them so much money, way more than we ever make back. The first thing you would try to solve for is just get the fucking salaries down. It was basically there in the T1 thing. Remember, T1, I can tell you, people like Real Madrid don't go, please get the salaries down. They go, lol, we use our salary to destroy our opponents, mate. If T1's going, please, we have to get the numbers down. There's another thing. We can also take what we have now and maximise it. We can figure out ways to have unions and salary caps, which they've done softly, but we're still a long way off that working, as implied by these comments.
Yeah, I think the thing that fans don't understand is like the region with the highest median salary by far is LCK. Like LCK is the highest size, which, 10 years ago, when Monty was setting up his team, like they paid nothing, China
was the highest for a long time.
But at that time, it was NA
back in the day.
But people still think.
Yeah, I used to tell people back in the day the joke of League of Legends was Doublelift probably made like 5 times what like the best Korean player made. It was ridiculous back then.
Yeah, it is super interesting because like a lot of the Korean model was based on the fact that the players were paid so little. You know,
yes.
Koreans also, if you notice, like in terms of contracts, it's usually 1-year deals. Only recently the players have been signing 2 or 3 year deals. But Faker was a 1-year deal until like 2021 or 2. You know, like it was for a very, very long time in his career. No buyouts ever. You never heard about people buying each other out in that way.
It's become such a scandal now of how they sort of battle like Western teams. They're not used to that in Korea, bro. They can't.
I do think for a long time it was kind of like there was like a salary that you got paid. Let's just call it $1,000. Obviously, it was a lot more than that, but it's as an example. And it's like that basically everyone pays $1,000, and it's like, well, I want to play with the good players, or the good players deciding who gets on their team. Like that's kind of how it was because there was no other real protectionism happening, and then the Korean scene eventually was pressured to bid up their market because they wanted to compete with LPL teams.
Yep.
And that was when the LPL was at its apex of expansion, right? Like, they wanted to set up intra-China travel by having everybody have their own stadium. That was like a big mandate.
Fortunately, the timing was also when all this stuff happened.
But at that time, when Korea was paying, they had to catch up. And then 2 years later, China stopped paying, but Korea had already kind of like got to the point where they were paying, right? And it's very painful to decouple that for the top teams. Because the reason why I said median salary is like, I don't know how many Korean teams are paying minimum this year. Obviously, I know the teams that are paying lots. And then also like the esport, what you talk about the viewership growing, that also means that you have orgs like Hanwha, who very much people know is like, it's like a rich person's plaything. Like, it's not like you have in the same league, kind of like I'm trying to like run a P&L versus like, well, that sounds fun. I'd love to have that player on my team, which is only going to bid the market up higher for the people trying to compete. And then, like you say, there'll be people who are like min-maxing quite well in the lower ends of it. But Korea, has there ever been a sport or esport where that was the reality, where they were like the world leader in pay? And like, I can totally understand that causing kind of like unique issues for that ecosystem that they're trying to manage. I totally get where like the T1 CBD, the business guys coming from, is they have kind of created a scenario that's like played out in other regions in esports that's like actually quite novel to Korea, and they're trying to work out how to decouple themselves from the situation they're in. Because if you want to chase for winning LCK, you are paying a boatload of money, like a world leading amount of money to do so. Absolutely.
But you get my point, though. Like, we already have what should be a very successful amount of viewerships and a great amount of people playing and interested. So to me, it's like, how do we scale things accordingly and make that work as a business?
I mean, you guys are just as qualified as me to speak on this. Like, is empty calorie viewership like profitable? Like, do you get money from having lots of viewers like you did 10 years ago?
Yeah, not anymore, unfortunately, because again, like a lot of things, I'll lay that on the North American doorstep as well. A lot of, I know.
To be clear, I'm Australian. This guy next to me, Monty, he's American.
I know. I'll lay that on the North American doorstep because a lot of the people were using those numbers and then massaging those numbers, misrepresenting those numbers. That then became just out and out lies about like click-through rates and ROI, and we lost people. This is the thing people haven't really been talking about. It's not just that we're losing sponsors from outside of esports. There's a lot of endemic esports that sponsors that are so sick and tired of the bullshit that you'll notice they're all scaling back their spending as well.
The holidays are over, but you can still get excellent savings on Mint Mobile. Now, What is Mint Mobile, you might ask? So Mint Mobile is a wireless carrier. You bring your own phone to the wireless carrier, and it saves you a ton of money on your wireless bill. The end of the year sale is extended, but it's only going on until the end of January. I highly recommend switching. I use Mint Mobile myself now when I'm in the US, because all you have to do is you get 50% off the 3, 12, 6, or 12 months of unlimited data plan. That's just $15 a month. It's huge savings. And for me, I use a lot of Wi-Fi networks, and also I'm in the States periodically, but it comes with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and it's delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. I noticed zero difference when I switched over from my former major wireless carrier, except the difference is that I'm paying like $15 a month now instead of paying, what was it before, $100, $90, something like that for a premium plan. They also, for me, which is very important, have international plans, and all you have to do is go into the app, and it can cost as low as, I think, like a couple bucks a day, $5 a day if you just have a shorter duration pass, but you can get Wi-Fi or high-speed wireless in a number of countries, almost all of them worldwide. So if you travel a lot too, it can be extremely useful. So I definitely would recommend Mint Mobile. Excellent service, and for an unlimited plan at $15 a month, it really can't be beat. So this January, quit overspending on wireless with 50% off unlimited premium wireless. Plans start at $15 a month at mintmobile.com/fourhorsemen, plural, FOURHORSEMEN. That's mintmobile.com/fourhorsemen. It's a limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12 months, plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. Taxes and fees extra, initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy, capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com for details. And thanks to Mint for sponsoring the Four Horsemen. Yeah.
And it's a direct result.
This goes to the core of the issue, and I think we should talk about possible ways that, esports and League of Legends in particular can be successful from a business perspective going forward, because we're at a point where the publishers are cutting back, or the tournament operators. ESL is certainly feeling, the pressure from the Saudi government to be more popular. So we're at a time of cost cutting. We're at a time of low spending, and to talk about analogous products. So for example, talent-based products. So like the NFL or the entertainment industry or LFN, like we try and operate as 50% of the revenue that we create goes directly to the talent. For example, in the NFL is about 48%. So the salary cap in the NFL, which is the maximum amount of money a team can spend, which is the money that goes to the players, 48% of the total revenue of the league is the calculation for the salary cap, right? The problem with esports is it became speculative, which is that all more money than the teams were making because of VC was actually going to the players. The budget of talent, in this case the players, was like 150% of revenue, right? Or more.
More than that, for sure. For most, most teams.
Yeah, which is insane, because there was an arms race to get the best players to grow the fastest to help grow the industry, because that's what was required, right? In order to justify the investments from venture capital, it had to grow. The players were ultimately hugely the beneficiaries of this. But we're at a point now. Now, where does that revenue come from, the NFL? The overwhelming amount of revenue comes from two things: media rights and ticket sales. Neither of these really exist in esports, although LEC is now doing more road shows with MCOY and Carmine Corp, which is good, right? Because hopefully they can generate revenue from ticket sales. But the question is, how do we reach the point of sustainability? And the reason why 50% is the number is obviously you have a lot of overhead costs, right? You have staff that need to be paid. At the NFL, you have stadium upkeep. You have, all of the coaches, like everything, because that's not part of the salary cap, guys. So there's enormous costs associated with this. Plus, I hope we all agree that it would be nice for teams to be profitable, to be a good business where somebody makes money at the end of the day, more money than they're spending. So there are reasons behind this, but the 50% number is like basically the business standard in talent-based businesses. And like I said, is what we try and do here with LFN. When you see us have sponsors, guys, it's actually 60% of that revenue goes to talent because we have lower costs. Okay. But like, that's the model that we're operating under. And so when we talk about this structure, like, how do we get there in esports without media rights? Now, obviously, there are certain advantages that esports has, microtransactions, but the developers up until recently have not been willing to share that revenue because that's their revenue, right? And this was a marketing exercise for them to sell skins. But as a team, PapaSmithy in League of Legends, and you look at this, what are the ways where you can derive, you see yourself like actually being able to hit what I assume is your target as well, which is like 50% of revenue is going to your players and the rest of it is successfully supporting the business of FlyQuest?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I think for a long time, enterprise sponsorship deals were quite large, especially when you're talking about, 2016 through 2022 kind of times. And I think that was where you're like, how much do I allocate to the competitive team versus like the other parts of your org was the question. I think these days it's about kind of like you're talking about, like for example, for FlyQuest, we got a lot of praise for our merchandise and apparel in the last couple of years, and that has led to actual significant revenue, and we were able to kind of like multiplicatively increase that revenue year on year from both competitive success.
That's good to hear because your world stuff was cool. I think it looked cool.
So the apparel stuff has been big for us, but that's like not every team can just sell apparel, like that was like 100 Thieves main advantage for a long time. Like the hoodie org was a very profitable org to be a part of. So like we definitely set a high watermark there and we'll continue to go at it. I look at other games, like for example, we have Sonic Fox on our roster, and that's like a big presence in 2XKO, and fighting games is a different thing. But at the same time, we've also launched a app main stage that's about kind of like setting up like a tutorial experience and a tracking experience in 2XKO for new players to like learn the game and get on top of it. That's like a product we've launched. It's a complementary project because it's like, hey, we have the best 2XKO player in the world. They use this tool to track themselves and get better. If you're interested in playing 2XKO, you should download this tool. Like that's like very obviously like a complementary kind of business vertical for us that if we're not able to sell that, how are we able to sell anything, right? Like that's like as one-to-one of like, if you want to watch 2XKO and you think this player is good, then you should take this on. And I think those sort of things are increasingly like getting your, like segmenting a fan base and getting them to purchase things is absolutely going to be the pass fail, because I think like you're hypothesizing, if you just wait for your share of your league allocated revenue every year and produce nothing else, the question of why are we continuing to do this only gets louder. Like you have to get out there and be a disruptor and push boundaries. And I think that's been our experience. So like we've been able to grow revenue consistently since we came to FlyQuest the last few years from being creative, but we're one team, in one ecosystem, and I don't think it's easy to replicate by any means.
It's also that, sports teams shouldn't have to invent all of these ancillary businesses to operate as a sports team. You know what I mean? At what point are you just not a sports team anymore, right? And that was the TSM issue. Like we all know TSM's primary business was Blitz and websites, like guide websites. And like it at some point it has to actually be sustainable to be in these developer tournament organizer relationships as a team by itself. And then the other part of it can be cream on the side. But
to do that, you have to cut back a lot. Like, for example, you can't really have a facility in Los Angeles and also not try to create lots of multiple businesses. Like if you want to just be a sports team, you should have a team house and like streamline overhead costs. Because like when you're working out profitability, you need to factor in the size of your staff, the amount of business staff you have, etc.
Sure, but I mean, this goes back to like, why are the teams and why is the LCS in Los Angeles? Like why?
Because it always was, and because Riot's here. And I'm not saying that's a reason, but a good reason, but it is the reason, obviously.
You know,
Which is another example of I want to succeed, but I'll only do it in this mega expensive place with all guys. Well, then you don't want to succeed.
it's also,
by the way, I can tell you, I'm not being a hypocrite in this sense. Oh, if you asked me what I wanted to do 10, 15 years ago, it was be a great news post writer, mate, or something like that. Like, I've had to pivot about 5 times in my fucking career, a million times over, in order to succeed. And what's bizarre is Riot are the only ones who just, because, like I say, they locked into some crazy golden goose. Just imagine they don't have to do these things for some reason. I don't get it myself.
Yeah, and like, you know, we know they're cutting costs because of the things they do. For example, Worlds this year is taking place. Everything up until the grand finals is in Allen, Texas.
I have a good positive association with Allen, Texas. I didn't win the LTA there, but I understand it.
Look, I think I did stuff with Overwatch League there. You know what I mean? Like, I think the venue is actually very good for esports. I don't hate it, but my point is like, why is LCS in LA, but Worlds 95% of Worlds is in Allen, Texas? Like, shouldn't that be in Allen, Texas? LCA? Or LCS?
That's even a bizarre thing to me that Riot again got to do, and so did Overwatch League, where they just came and with a blank slate said, I'll just go to the biggest cities. You do know how esports grew organically in North America. Someone should actually write a paper on this. I'm not as knowledgeable about North American sports to do it, but I can tell you it's a really fascinating thing. You know, things like MLG, they essentially followed the model of professional wrestling, which is you don't start in New York in Madison Square Garden. You start in bumfuck nowhere, Ohio, and you get the people there because the costs are really low. And then when the project grows, then you
Are
have
you
the big
saying
event in Madison Square
Katowice
Garden.
is not a destination location in
How
Europe?
about Columbus,
Duncan?
Ohio?
That's also what we did in Counter-Strike. By the way, in Counter-Strike, it would cost a lot more to have all the event in fucking London than it would in Katowice or in Cologne, etc. And so this is what was done. Again, Riot, for whatever reason, doesn't... I'll tell you another classic thing about Riot. They don't look at other people's mistakes and successes and learn from them. They have to always touch the fire themselves to find out it burns, or be frivolous with money to find out that you don't have money after that. Like, I don't get this myself. You can just look at the other people's things and learn their lessons, or even sometimes get ahead of them and figure out what their problems will be in the future.
But my point is like, you know, I don't hate the fact that it's all in Allen, Texas. I thought that it was ridiculous that they would travel all over everywhere to do Worlds, because as we know from working Worlds, Papa, it creates a lot of problems with creating content, right, week to week. And considering that 99.9% of people are experiencing it on stream, and that arena will be full for Worlds, what's the difference? You know what I mean? The difference is you can actually make better content by not spending all your time going all over North America, going to Mexico and then to Canada and then back to the US. Like, it's going to make a better product. So, you know, I don't hate this. And I especially don't hate that it costs less money, because I don't think there was a point to doing it the way they did it before. As long as you're going to have a good fan base and a full arena, and that is a nice space for esports. But my point is like, if you're pushing for sustainability, surely we should be trying to lower the cost for teams across the board. And the best way you can do that is not to lower the cost of Worlds. It's to lower the cost of the domestic leagues. It's to move out of Berlin, right? I don't think there's a question that Spain is a much better choice for the LEC at this juncture, given the Spanish fan base and given the cost of production and everything like that. And that moving out of Los Angeles to Chicago or Texas or one of these locations would be 1,000,000 times better for cost than the LCS.
Look, obviously my players would be very happy if we moved to Chicago from the perspective of low paying solo queue, right? Like, that's like one of the biggest advantages there. But you would lose production people, I assume, because they would not want to leave Los Angeles. If that's the trade-off,
I doubt that
works
given
for
the
you.
state of the entertainment industry in Los Angeles, I doubt these people will be clinging to those jobs. And it's like,
listen, there will have to be bodies in the rubble if we're going to build a new fucking future.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm down to move to Chicago personally. I have no problem.
Also, a lot of the production has now been outsourced. Like, a lot of the control functions of LCS are in Seattle now. You know,
I know LEC is Dublin, right?
It's run out of Dublin. They got rid of all the people on staff. What LEC has done, by the way, guys, is they moved all of the control room people to Dublin on their contractors to a different company. And then all of the camera operators, or most of them at least, are from Blast. And they literally ship them in from Denmark for the shows and then ship them back out. So who is working in Berlin? You could do this anywhere, is the point. So the only thing that this does, as far as I can tell, is increase cost for the teams. who have to be in these locations, because Riot has outsourced this for the most part. And the conceit that you need LA people to run this level of production, we're not talking about NFL camera work here, guys. It's people with a camera on stage taking a videotape of players. There are people in Chicago who could do that, by the way.
But you know why it has to be LA. We're all sat here dancing around it. You know why it has to be LA.
Nice weather.
You want to be in the cigar lounge with all the popular people and the big business people and go, yes, of course.
As long as Mark Merrill is associated with Riot Games, it will be LA. Remember, he's a TV producer now, guys. So,
Very serious.
Did you know that we won an Emmy for Worlds? And also, did you see that Augmented Dragon? Have you checked out Arcade? We see, it's the whole esport burning and going to shit. Well, not my problem. Lol.
Yeah, not my problem. I'm a TV producer now. So, no, obviously, look, right from the get-go, the reason they were in LA was because it was fucking, it was the guys that founded the company, they fucking...
Essentially, I think
bunch of rich white boys want to fucking party in LA. That's it.
And echo his former sentiment, but to every team owner that's invested 50 million from all their VC partners, investors, he should just turn to them and all go, well, you know what, guys? You're welcome that we made you a free video game for you to have a career in. Yeah. Now suck my and then go do Arcane Season 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And bring in the writers of Stranger Things to do Arcane Season 3.
There really is. There was really no a valid reason to keep it as an LA based thing. Like, they needed to set up a studio in a much cheaper environment.
It's another great way to cut the costs, isn't it? Again, exactly. Like I say, this is also the American mentality. You know what the American mentality is? But how do I 100x the pie so I don't have to solve any of these problems? Like, how about plug the fucking leaks? How about make the margins?
You want to know what's crazy?
Then increase the revenue.
And I know this from my time living in Vegas. You could have done deals with fucking people in Vegas where they would have underwrote the cost of the studio for you because they just want to get you there,
there's the same thing people keep saying is going to happen with Hollywood, that eventually film production won't even be in Hollywood. It will be states like Texas and other ones will make profitable deals where you'll get like subsidies.
They're already doing all the Disney in Atlanta, right?
They should. We all joke about the whole Saudi thing. Like, maybe they should have just taken the Saudi banks. It's like free money, but that's just another stupid golden goose scenario where they just give you money for now and then eventually it's going to go where. I agree. Why weren't you going? By the way, if people don't know, I hope this isn't too obvious. That's the whole fucking reason ESL was ever in a Spodek arena in Katowice. There are the reason I trashed Katowice is because it isn't even the best place in fucking Poland. There are way bigger sports stadiums, like football ones in Poland, that would be enormous and look very modern, etc. The Spodek one is literally a fucking Soviet thing that looks like it was made a bazillion years ago, that has like gymnastics in it and stuff like that. You do that because Katowice gives you it for free. That's why you even let the fans in for free. Like, you cut the costs to as low as possible, and then you can max out the sponsorships and the cost. They've never done this in League. Now, part of the reason why, as I've been making a key theme of this episode, is they didn't have to before. Before, they could be the trust fund kid who could they could piss away money. They could go, lol, I don't need to maximize this. Why do I need Twitch subs? They could do that all day long. The problem is, as we pointed out, one day a Chinese overlord went, you work in box like mine now. Shout out to
so I do want to push this back to, I do appreciate that Riot is trying to cut costs in certain ways. And like, I do think it is critical to, as this is the Riot language, to right size, which of course just means make things potentially profitable. I don't understand why we have to use these stupid terms, but basically, make it sustainable. So, Papa, I want to get your take.
I appreciate the new speak, Monty.
I want to get your take on, what things could be done, and from your perspective as a team, that would be very helpful for you in League of Legends. Like, first off, what have they done that has helped you? And then what steps would you like to see them take so that, you could sit there and be like, FlyQuest League of Legends is like a great business that I'm running.
I'm trying to think of things that I can like specifically say Riot did. Obviously, salaries have come down a long way from the heyday when people were
the
talking
market
about
did that one.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, the thing is that Riot could have in LCS set some sort of salary cap, but they will not do that because that would require the creation of a real players union. And Riot as a company will not do that. Not even just about esports, because if they set a precedent that they are willing to negotiate with the players union, they might have to set a precedent that they would have to negotiate with their own employees union. Oh my God. So actually, that is the fundamental reason why a players union will never exist and a salary cap can't exist, is because Riot will crush that out of fear of their own non-esports employees forming a union within the company. And that's the truth, guys. But anyway, they won't do that. So it was the market that was actually resetting the player stuff. So what is Riot then, and what do you want them to do?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, like, in my head, triage the things that have, like, affected our bottom line, and definitely player salaries coming down has been helpful. I think what I would want them to do is definitely to continue to relax the categories, the sponsorship categories we can take. The
betting stuff has come in,
Yeah, it's still kind of like slow going to kind of complete the process that you want to go to be on board. I believe there's only one partner in the world, I want to say. There's like a Brazilian team that has a gambling sponsor, I believe, but otherwise,
because for those of you wondering, the betting companies have to be approved by Riot, which involves paying Riot. So Riot is telling the betting companies right now that you must pay us to vet you, and then we will approve you for the teams. And even then, the teams can't have the logos on the jersey, right, Papa? And like you can like create content, but it can't be like on the Riot broadcast. Is that correct?
I think that they're very strict about what's possible, versus in Counter-Strike, it's kind of like if you're not contravening that country's laws, it's chill, I guess, is kind of like the vibe they take. I think the more that Riot allowed us to kind of follow that same sort of adage, I think that would be helpful, just because there's like complementary, again, like a soju sponsor, that would go down really well for us too, but that's just not a thing we can do. So I think that's like something they could do that doesn't cost them money, right? Like it's just removal of a restriction.
Why are they against these things? Like even sports has just been like, fuck it, let's go, let's unlock this potential. I feel like you can't watch a sports broadcast now without some form of betting.
We can all speculate kind of like why. Like I know that Riot has tried to author metas and a lot of kind of like what they want out of player behavior and things. So maybe they have their own standard to these things. I don't know. I don't talk to the decision makers that decide that. When it comes to gambling, obviously it is owned by a Chinese company, and you can't endorse betting in China, so maybe it's related to that. Again, don't have that on the record from anybody either. But ultimately, I do think that it is. I think categories being relaxed, which the gambling stuff is still progress towards, even if it's not exactly where I'd want it now. Would be
but in Counter-Strike, we have events in China. We just put a fucking bit of duct tape over the logo and we just get on with our lives. Like, you know what I mean? It's like and those organizations get to make money from those partnerships. It just seems crazy to me. Like the genie's out the bottle on sports betting and esports betting. That's done. It's over. And also, like, I never understood why you couldn't advertise certain products. Like, why can't you have a hard liquor sponsorship? Why can't these things are legal? I'm old enough to do it in real life. Why can't my favorite team tell me, which brand they do it with?
What I understood for a long time was like the average age of the viewer was too young for a beer sponsor to be there. That was what I think was told around the time that
that would have been like 10 years ago.
I think it only got to the point we got a beer sponsor in 2020, I want to say, is when
and that makes sense given the age of the audience.
The audience age. I totally get that one.
It's something, I forget the exact number, but it is according to US law, for advertising alcohol, your audience has to be kind of like demonstrably, I think like 70%. It's either 2/3 or like 70% 21 plus.
And traditional sports is like a super old average age, right? Like I think I heard MLB is like 53 or something.
Yeah, it's like
I'd be interested to know what Premier League is. I would assume 40 something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but
why don't we ask Grok?
The average age of I mean, it's like that's such that must be the shittest stat, because it's like a global thing that's pirated 1 billion %. Like, who even has any idea?
You can do better than this, Grok.
And then I mean, obviously we look at Valorant with some jealousy, just because we don't have the same kind of like by the the FlyQuest gun skin situation in our MOBA. Like there isn't the buy the FlyQuest bundle, and it's actually not that easy to conceptualize realistically. Obviously, everyone will say well, a skin for every team, but I totally get that that's not real. Like it's not actually that easy to conceptualize like the product that's intuitive as everyone starts the game with a pistol in League of Legends. Like it would end up being like annoying readability things like a flash icon, or I don't even know what you would do. Like nothing is as obvious. So definitely like in-game monetization can always be more, right? Like right now it's herd people towards this skin and then get a percentage of a global number. Obviously anything else where it's like, this is the FlyQuest one we get the most of would be great.
So I can answer your question, thanks to the incredible, awesome power of Grok Super. And it says that 2024 data indicates the average age of UK Premier League fans is around 42. However, where the Premier League's been sold to foreign markets like the US, 50% of soccer fans there are under 24. And it says here that the if you were to take an average across all of the major territories in the world, it would be closer to 34 years, which is really good.
That's true.
That is a good number given the numbers we get from American sports. Or maybe it's just something about American sports viewership in general. I don't know. But that's the reason why I guess they were hesitant around certain categories. And still they are pushing their video game, then obviously like selling the sport alongside.
Yeah, it's hard because every sponsor that gets introduced takes away opportunities to advertise the game. Like it's a balance that Riot is striking between, hey, we want you to look at this skin, but if there's too many sponsors and Red Bull, Bear and Power plays and Bud Light Aces, you spend time looking at that instead of cool skin on screen.
I'll just put it this way, Monty. I think one elephant in the room on this particular topic, you notice how nearly all of the contrast was to Counter-Strike. That wasn't by accident. The game developer doesn't do anything in that game. They stay hands off. There is a direct conflict of interest, in my opinion, which is that Riot Games is two entities at once. They're the game developer who makes all the money from the game itself, and then they're also the person who's in charge of the franchise league with the teams. And I'm sorry, if I was one of the people in the franchise league, I'd be like, wait a minute, the schizophrenic Dr. Jekyll version of you that goes out the room and does the game developer part is the one fucking me all the time and won't let me get any of the other stuff. And then they go, sorry about that, I'll do what I can with the boss. And then they go, sorry, fuck that guy, let's just keep screwing him and min-maxing it. Like, that's one of the problems. And the problem with that is none of the team owners feel like they can do anything publicly about that. So I assume behind the scenes it's just constant fucking powwows and trying to get them to move the dial a little bit, because I think that is a major problem, as you've always pointed out, Monty. Right, if they didn't really need esports at all, they'd have jettisoned it ages ago. It doesn't make them any direct profit. Clearly it does indirectly via some magical method make them massive amounts of money on the game developer side. But since we'll never know what that is, how do we ever bridge that gap? Aren't we always just going, it could be this much, can we ask for 0.1% more, can you do a little step here? If the NFL, here's the quick answer for why the NFL has all the gambling shit. They don't have a fucking secondary football thing that's to do with non-professional football that makes them more money, do they, Monty? They only have the motherfucking NFL. Their only fiduciary responsibility is to those franchises, and including, and there's the final detail. They aren't just partners, mate. They are the NFL. That's the other thing as well. The teams are it as well. I don't think Riot has to, or quite frankly does, give as much of a fuck about Cloud9 as like the NFL does about the San Francisco 49ers being successful, mate. Just my take.
And I guess to finish off your question, Monty, it's I'm a big believer in like fundamental changes to the circuit in terms of like what a year should be. Like,
Do tell.
I think everyone points to like make it more like Counter-Strike as like a solve. Obviously, there was a long time in Counter-Strike where people were like, I would love to live in the same country and not travel as much. Like, this grass is always greener a little bit. Having now like sampled both, I think the fundamental issue I see, and this is, from a North American lens, because that's like the business I'm in, so I should leave my bias on the table, is there's too many times where there's a lot of people who like followed League at some point or played League, right? Like there's a very receptive, the awareness of League to like the Twitch generation is like almost 100%, even if not that many people are currently engaged with it. So like people will like stumble onto an LCS broadcast or something. And I think too often the answer to the question of, oh, okay, like I've heard of one of these teams before, what are the stakes of this game? Like, what happens for the winner? I think too often the answer is nothing really. Like, there's been too many, play a double round robin best of one, then all teams make it to playoffs kind of situations. Or I think the stakes for games, like at this point, if you listen to the fan base, the only stakes they care about are qualifying for Worlds is like the thing that even MSI is like diluted, even though it's like a better format, as we all know. And that they reinforce that with, there's World skins, but there isn't MSI skins. You know what I mean? Like Worlds has all the pomp and circumstance, and it's the big event of the year that everyone's desperate to make. And then from there, depending on what region you're in or where you're at, everything else is diluted. And in my dream scenario, if you're playing domestic games, it's as a qualifier for an international event, and you find ways to make all of the international events compelling. I don't know if that means in-game monetization specifically associated with all that. I don't know if that means crowdfunding. I don't know what that means, but ideally, if you're watching FlyQuest versus Cloud9, you know that it's a fixed term, multi-week thing to qualify for a big international event. You have the international event, and then we start it all again. So it's like 6 qualifiers for 6 international events. That's how we go. I don't know if that means you still do majors, like maybe 2 of them are bigger. I don't know if that means Worlds still exists, so the other 5 are of a different size. But I feel very when you watch Counter-Strike, and like a lot of people are like experimenting with Counter-Strike. As far as I can tell, Counter-Strike's the only esport that has like a growing English language viewership that's like any level of mature esport. I think the reason why is that when you tune in, when you fall over a Blast stream or ESL stream, you can be like, okay, where are we? Okay, we're in London. We're in the group stage. When's the final? It's not a month away. It's not Worlds. It's not 7 months away. The final of this tournament that like theoretically has $1 million or something associated to it is in some of these tournaments are 3-day tournaments. Some of these tournaments are like a week to 10-day tournaments. Like it's coming up, and like you only need to sustain your attention until that date, and you show up at that final if you like miss some of it, and then you're going to have a story. Like I watched Counter-Strike. I watched that Blast London thing like crazy. The Falcons won, but like if you tune in for 3 days in February of League of Legends, like what is your output? What is your viewership story? Like what is like the thing that you saw? Like maybe nothing. You know what I mean? Like maybe some games that didn't build to anything. And I think building stakes towards every game being played, like yes, that could be amazing marketing and content and unlimited money spent to like make a story out of every game. And I'm also someone who watches the Premier League, where like Man United versus Stoke might not mean anything, but I think to this generation of people, this younger generation of viewers under 30, their attention is very limited, and competing for it is extremely hard because you're competing with the global consciousness of every type of entertainment available instantly. And you just have to hold such high expectations to yourself to be like, this is why we're compelling you to watch. And I think that's a bar that gets higher literally every day, that all of us on this call, whether it's like LFN trying to get people to watch their YouTube or the LCS trying to get you to watch matches, have to contest against. And that's what I want us to aspire to more. But that's especially felt for me because like obviously LCS viewership compared to like LCK viewership, that domestic games are still growing, is just a different kettle of fish,
Well, I think also when we talk about traditional, people will say, well, what about traditional sports? They still have huge viewership, and
you're
they
still
run
geolocated, and you still got
they're also, like we said, older. They have high, what's going to happen when the boomers start dying, and what happens to the viewership of these sports is a great question, because they're entrenched in their habits and they will keep watching this until they expire. It's not true of esports, right? Especially ones that are trying to grow viewership or new esports that are coming up. And so like the stakes, I think that you're saying are extremely pertinent, right? Because this creates this sense of immediacy, and you need immediacy to capture attention spans of younger people in the year 2026.
If you ask me to guess 2030, what does the circuit look like? It's like ESL runs the qualifiers for 2 tournaments a year. Blast runs the tournaments for the Riot pays for a major, Worlds, maybe Worlds and MSI. Yep. And It's deregulated a lot, and domestic play is the biggest loser. So like Korea and Brazil especially will be really upset with that because they both have very entrenched, I just want to watch my local fan bases go kind of cultures. And then, the other leagues like LEC and especially LCS, who are like, wake me up when Worlds is there, theoretically has their people, their interests sated faster. And to me, honestly, the best data point, and maybe this is cope, but the best data point I saw last year was that MSI was not in. Basically, they didn't like gamify the Canadian time zone to like be really, really receptive to Asian viewership like they have in the past for events in North America and especially Europe, where they'll just like, why are the games starting at this time local? Oh, I understand. I can do the like math here. And the viewership was really strong for MSI, which suggests that in a North American based time zone, a lot of people were watching League of Legends. And yes, it was an international product with Faker, etc. But theoretically, if no one cared about League of Legends in this region, then no one would watch those
language
games.
Viewership of LCK continues to hit new highs, right? And people are migrating towards the top tier.
Isn't that also
league.
a problem, Monty? Another problem we have that doesn't cross over to a game like Counter-Strike is, in Counter-Strike, the main viewing region is also the best players. It's Europe.
Yep.
Well, the problem in this case is, and this was always going to be, unfortunately, one of the reasons why, in my opinion, you were always going to have a hard time with the LCS, etc., is eventually, like you said, Monty, you nailed it actually 15 years ago. Riot's best trick they ever pulled was for a long time pulling the wool over people's eyes with not many international tournaments, that maybe TSM was close to T1. Whereas in reality, the gap was always enormous, even 12 years ago. It was always they were never going to win Worlds. But the difference is now, there's not a chance to win Worlds. It's not even on the table. It's not even considered like, you've got to be confident. Now you're an idiot if you say that, if you're an NA player. Like, no one even takes you seriously. They don't even believe that you believe it. So I do think you've also got a big problem bridging that gap if we're talking about the Western regions. Like, you can see that people are, as much as they would like the international tournaments, I think they'd also get bummed out seeing everyone lose all the time. Even though I personally will say, by the way, you would also have more parity. You'd have, by having more tournaments, you'd have the odd run to a final.
I think you'd make the NA teams better by doing that. So I think it actually would increase parity.
The top spenders would spend a lot more time in Asia and only be back home to play qualifiers, which, Team Liquid was considered North American until very recently. And they had 2 Canadian players and never spent any time in North America unless they had to. So, yeah, I think people will be generous about representing a subculture if you're smart about it. Just like coming back to KC having Caliste and from there getting to be the like preeminent French team. Like, the
joke is that's another area Monty was inadvertently right. Guess what? Sending your team to Korea as often as possible to bootcamp, etc., was the future. Always. Why Riot was against that again. I think this. I know what you mean, Papa. Here's the thing: if it was purely in a theoretical world, I can see the value in what they wanted to do. They wanted to be United Colours of Benetton and grow the whole world in a giant ecosystem. And even Brazil would be important, and Vietnam would be important, and Europe would have it. So the problem with that is, mate, let's worry about that once we've got the basics covered. Let's get an esport, let's get it profitable, let's get it healthy, let's grow it. Then we can do those.
But that process mindset you have, Duncan, like, if you follow conventional wisdom, League of Legends would never have been a relevant title. Like, a MOBA taking over the world is fucking insane. Like, what are the unlikely variables that came together for League of Legends to be the biggest game in the world for as long as it has been? So I totally understand, like, if that happened, then being like, okay, then we can have infinite growth in every region, and like, high school people grow up dreaming to be an esports player, and the player base only continues to grow. Like, no one plays sports anymore because I heard that, if you play football, then you're going to get, all these brain injuries and stuff like that. Like, they'll just play esports. Like,
by the way, that even could have been a thing. I can tell you from what Monty looked into. If you could go back in a time machine, one of the things you actually do if you go back to 2012 is this is the one area you do go grassroots. You go hard as fuck at the collegiate thing if you're right. You don't do this like outsource.
Yeah, people have talked about Playverse.
You should have tried to get people.
And look, Riot failed that. And failed that and probably got unlucky, let's say. But let's mostly focus on the failed. Sure. And it's like, what if they got lucky at that? Then maybe this plan would have worked, Absolutely. Like there was a way to straight line it. Because a lot of League of Legends success is unprecedented. So they sold for what they sold for. I didn't think it was the right thing to sell for. In the end, it didn't work. Like, that's the story there. But I don't want to go back and be like, why'd you even try? Because like, how the fuck is this game the thing that's given me the career I've had, you know? Like, there's a lot of like fucking luck that went into all of this too.
All I'll just say is this: there's a reason why you're not just the GM of League of Legends, and you also have to fuck around with an Australian Counter-Strike team, mate.
I like the boys. We're doing all right.
He's been doing good work there. I was a bit surprised at the Regali roster move, but
True, they have won a best of 3 at a major.
true.
That was hard. That was hard.
I'll even say this: this is how much work you've done, bro. I even bet on your team and won a bet on it.
Yeah.
Those are 2 historic things.
I feel like that's a you.
We're breaking all sorts
That's
of
a
ground.
you problem. That's like something's wrong with you that happened. I don't want to take any credit for it.
Oh, don't worry. I hopped straight off it and won all the bets against it afterwards. So I'm loving it all the way around. Mate. Keep doing great work.
All right.
You can pump up those odds, Solby.
So are there any other things you want to call out, PapaSmithy, about what's going on in the world, like of League of Legends? You know, it's not a salary cap in the LCK, but the kind of luxury tax salary system has been put in place right now. We have the announcement of these multiple LEC road shows, which seems very encouraging. You know, MSI seems, as you point out, seems to be doing better and better. So what are some of the other things that you think are affecting the scene, or the big stuff that's going to happen in 2026?
And there's an accumulation of good decisions being made. You know, like the LTA was obviously like a notable failure, but I think that there's like an accumulation of like good scale decisions being made. No one of them is going to lead to like a viewership explosion, but I think in general, I can tell you that collaboration with Riot and collaboration across teams is also a lot more feasible and real these days. And so there's always this hope of like an accumulation of good decisions will be recognized. Probably the time that was last felt in the LCS was summer 2023, you know, before the LTA. Was it 2024? Summer 2024, you know, when Mark's stuff was coming in, we're playing best of threes and there was some positive inertia. That didn't mean the viewership was like amazing, but it was like at least
The vibes were good.
The vibes were good, and I think the vibes will restart and be good this year as well, even though there's going to be viewership challenges. So I just think I didn't come into this space to like get the big bag, if you know what I mean, which definitely was like the thing that attracted a lot of people in like that 2017 to 2021 era. Like I played a game in Australia and it took me around the world. And so I kind of just judge the space where it is and try to move it forward in a way that, you know, makes me smile or that I enjoy or that will get some good wins for my company. And I think in a scaled way, 2026 is going to be a lot of fun, even if like I can't sit there and make big proclamations about the viewership and things like that, because that's going to need a concerted effort and a lot of time and a lot of data points to justify people putting the same amount of time into League of Legends than they were before in a time where people have less and less time to give any one thing. So that's kind of how I think about it, is that my day-to-day is still hopeful and optimistic and there's still lots of wins there. But in terms of like how to say that any one change or any one thing is going to like bring League of Legends to where it was before, I don't have anything for you on that. I don't mean that in a spooky way either. It's just, all I can do is kind of like at my scale, try to fix what I see and try to make suggestions and then wait to see what shakes out. Because I do think that the model of this is all going to evolve.
That's not doom and gloom, by the way. There's no problem with League of Legends being a stable esport with its current level of viewership, which is still exceptional, by the way. You know,
Still a big esport.
yeah. You know,
Especially on the international scale, for sure.
yeah, it can truck along, and nobody's gonna be sad that Worlds is the, you know, MSI and Worlds are the same scale that they're at right now. And like for me, it's just a matter of, you know, making sure that it's actually a sustainable business at this size. We have to put away the delusions that this is going to blow up into something that's 10x as massive as it was 10 years ago, which is where all the investment money came from. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong. And League of Legends 2 does do all these things. And all of a sudden, every high schooler is playing League of Legends with all these updates. I think that's extraordinarily unlikely to occur, but you never fucking know. You know what I mean? You never know. So if that's the case and they can convert those fans into esports fans, well, then maybe we have another 10 years of high growth of League of Legends. But I don't think you can safely bet on that. And so it's just about adjusting the ecosystem in a way that makes sense for the teams now.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's really not much to expand on that. I think we've definitely found the floor, just like we found the ceiling a few years ago. And I think that we're making smart decisions around that and finding ways to raise it time to time with letdowns along the way. And that's fine for me, even if it might not be fine for someone else who came into this space with other goals or expectations,
Any other guys have final thoughts on the state of League?
One last piece of information for you, Monty. You can tell Susie as if I'm like Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi. You were right, Susie. You were right. Because you know what? The LCS is now 44% Korean. She was right all along. All you should do is bring fucking Koreans over. There you go.
Yeah.
How simple was it?
I mean, for me, look, it doesn't necessarily mean that like League of Legends has to kind of swirl down the pan. Although I would argue, these trends, they're going to come and go. Different types of games are going to hit at different times, different genres and stuff. But if they are going to release another season of Arcane, and they are going to do a visual update of the game, that's going to give it a fresh lick of paint and a more modern look. I would say sometimes taking stuff away can be a good thing too. I mean, not always. If you're a World of Warcraft fan, Cataclysm. If you're a Warhammer fan, End Times doesn't always work. But I mean, why not use the launch of a new game as an opportunity to like take out some redundant champions? Say we're putting them away for say we're putting them away for a rework. Give some refunds for some goodwill, and give yourself more runway to like introduce or reintroduce those champions with a design philosophy that fits with all the new champions you've been putting out. I think there's way too many.
Richard, they should kill half the champions in the game. Just to make it more accessible.
I'm not even saying.
I always thought you should just do the trading card model of you have sets and you have seasons and then because then you can also bring them back for a classic 1, 2, etc. I also feel like it gets rid of the whole problem if you're a new player that you can't. That's the best. By the way, if people don't know, the best thing about Magic the Gathering is you can start today. You don't have to know all the cards from the 90s, etc. League has that problem, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts for you guys?
Thorin had something, I think.
The state of LoL.
I would just say this, even though it wasn't a massive thing we discussed in this episode, because it's just like a whole, again, alternate reality that we'd have to enter into. One of the reasons I hope that what Papa said earlier about what the scene could be in a few years happens is, even though I wouldn't go as far, because I don't think anyone will ever accept it as doing like a pure Super League, to me, the reason why you want to move more towards something akin to a Counter-Strike model, you're already figuring this out within regions like LEC regionally, is, think about this. One thing I can tell you today is there are teams like T1 that a lot of people around the world want to watch, right? If I was an LCS owner, the number one thing I'd be asking for is, please bring T1 to my region and have them play in a tournament in my region with my team, like Cloud9 or Team Liquid. That would be a way tomorrow to bring viewership and eyes and interest to that team in a way it currently doesn't have. That's something you can solve very, very quickly. True, it takes a circuit change, but by the way, they're fucking with the circuit every single year anyway, adding tournaments, adding a thing. So it's not like you've shown you're only going to move at a snail's pace. So there's one thing.
The LTA format fucking has been proven to be bullshit. So.
And then also, we already discussed it earlier, again, as much as, yes, it would be nice to increase the pie and bring in new viewers, but also, how about take care of the people that are here now and crush the margins as much as possible and do things like move to areas that cost less to house people and to have the event. To me, it should be all of these things at once. It's not pick one direction. These all help do the same thing, in my opinion, because I agree. I actually think we got to a good place at the end there. As I tried to make the point, if you looked at the Korean numbers, before I tell you what the salaries are, you'd go, this must be an incredible runaway success of an esport. But the Koreans are almost like fucking borderline suicidal over the margins. So if you figure out the margins, you've already got millions of viewers. That's a success. That is an incredible esport. But you have to monetize that. Again, we can't be thinking like 10 years ago, but wait, Thorin, why can't we just 10x the viewership? Then the margins, no, make the margins make sense today. Make them make sense today. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that in Europe, teams are starting to understand where they are in terms of like you look at the popular teams, right? G2, Koi, KC, and to some degree Fnatic. It's cool that G2 seems to like, it's not like G2 is trying to put on lots of homestand events. They're very much like, hey, we know we'll be a great guest and we'll bring a lot of pomp and circumstance to your homestand that you have a unique advantage to set up in Spain, Koi, France, KC, and you know we're going to bring competitiveness, viewership, interest. Like, it's nice that they can be, it's nice to have kind of like the people who have, like, let KC run events and let G2 attend them. That's the wrestling analogy.
Yeah.
And I think if every team had an introspective kind of like, what is the value we provide? Who are we trying to appeal to, and what unique advantage do we have? Mindset, which again would be even easier if we had much more geolocation towards the story. Then, like you say, Duncan, like every team wants to play against T1. That's like a viewership opportunity for them. But as long as you kind of understand where you are and how to set that up and the levels to it, like there's a reason that Korea can have T1 homestands. That part of that's T1 is massive, and part of that is the cost of a homestand in a industry set up around one city with not a lot of transport required is very different to like, let's just have a homestand in Miami. It's like, okay, well, that's going to be really expensive to fly everybody there. America's a huge country. Like, use the economies of scale and the advantages you have around a product that still has a lot of people that plays it, and this stuff will all start to make more sense. It's like, I think a business model everyone's starting to apply it to themselves, and a lens everyone's starting to understand. I think that is a promising thing about the current state of League of Legends.
Notice one of the points I'm making is when you have current successes, amplify and build on those. Like, by the way, I made it extreme with T1. It doesn't have to be T1. If I'm Cloud9, I also want to compete against Carmine Corp. By the way, I even want to compete against Los Ratones, bring them all, make it WWE, get them all into the events. That's why the one area about the super team angle that did always make sense, in my opinion, is I don't really know what DN Supers does for T1. I don't think it fucking helps me, but I think I help DN Supers by playing them. I don't know what they do for me. Well, the joke is, even if you think Los Ratones is worse than DN Supers, I'd rather play Los Ratones if I'm T1. That even brings more for me.
All right. Well, I think that's about it for our annual State of League of Legends. Thank you very much, PapaSmithy, for joining us.
Yes, thank you, dude.
Pleasure.
Appreciate your time. And as always, Esports Delenda Est.